Ren's journey. The air in the forest didn't smell like Yorna's asphalt or the salty spray of Whale Island. It smelled of heavy, damp loam, crushed fern leaves, and something vaguely sulphurous lingering just under the canopy. You sat on a moss-covered root, staring down at a pair of hands that were undeniably yours, yet far too small. The calluses on your knuckles were gone, replaced by the soft skin of an 8 or 9-year-old boy. A ragged brown wool coat hung off your small shoulders, smelling faintly of wood smoke. In the side pocket, you found 3 copper coins of an unfamiliar mint and a small, worn brass compass that refused to point north. According to the calendar hanging in the dusty merchant's depot you had wandered past an hour ago, the year was 1981. You were decades ahead of the story you once read long before the 287th Hunter exam, before Gone Freaks ever picked up a fishing rod, and well before the world knew the true terror of the chimera ants. The world of Hunter x Hunter was wide, vast, and utterly indifferent to a boy with no name and no place to go. Chapter 1, The Outskirts of Zaban. The village of Oakhaven was less of a town and more of a stopping point for logging wagons traveling toward the Republic's eastern provincial border. Hey, boy. Move those crates or find somewhere else to sleep. A stout man with a beard full of sawdust, Old Man Corin, barked from the doorway of the sawmill. He had found you shivering near the lumber stacks 3 days ago. Instead of chasing you off, he threw a broom at your feet and offered a bowl of lukewarm turnip broth. I'm moving them, Mr. Corin, you said, your young voice pitching higher than you were used to. You hoisted a wooden crate filled with iron nails. Your legs wobbled under the weight, but you gritted your teeth and heaved it onto the bed of an ox-drawn cart. You called yourself Ren. It was short, simple. While your physical body was weak, your mind was sharp. You spent your evenings sitting by the small fireplace in Corin's shed, observing everything. You paid close attention to the travelers passing through. The merchants talked endlessly about fluctuating trade tariffs in the Mytene Union. The mercenaries, rough men carrying heavy steel broadswords and early-model bolt-action rifles, talking about wild beast infestations in the north. The rumors, hints of strange, superhuman individuals who could catch bullets or heal wounds with a touch, the whispered mention of Nin, though nobody in this backwater town knew the word for it. Chapter 2, The First Hint of Power. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. You were sent into the nearby woods to gather dry firewood before the evening rain turned the brush into mud. The forest was quiet, save for the rhythmic pitter-patter of drops hitting the dense leaves above. As you dragged a heavy fallen oak branch back toward the trail, a low, guttural growl echoed from the thicket. You froze. Stepping out from behind a massive cedar was a creature that had no right existing in the world you came from. It looked like a wolf, but its torso was elongated, its fur matted with dried mud, and its eyes burned with a dull, unnatural red light. A low-tier magical beast, a spotted hound. Your heart hammered against your ribs like a trapped bird. Your small, untrained 8-year-old body wouldn't outrun it. You had no weapon, only the bundle of damp twigs at your feet. Fear is just energy, you reminded yourself, forced to stay grounded by sheer survival instinct. Think. The hound lunged, its jaws snapping inches from your face. You threw yourself to the side, tumbling into the wet ferns. Pain shot up your elbow as it struck a rock, but the adrenaline drowned it out. Instinctively, as you scrambled backward against the trunk of an elder tree, you pooled every ounce of your concentration outward, wishing violently to push the creature away. For a split second, something flickered. It wasn't a visible aura, you didn't know how to open your node points yet, but a sudden, intense burst of pure, raw intent flared from your body. It was a faint, unconscious surge of life energy. The spotted hound hesitated mid-stride. Its ears pinned back, sensing an unnatural aura of pure, desperate malice radiating from a child that should have been easy prey. It growled, took 2 cautious steps backward, and vanished into the fog of the tree line. Chapter 3, A Long Road Ahead. You slumped against the tree trunk, gasping for air, sweat mixing with the cold rain on your forehead. Your body felt completely drained, as if you had just run a marathon. You looked down at your trembling hands. You were in 1981. You were poor, small, and completely powerless in a world governed by the law of the jungle. But as you felt that tiny, fleeting spark of life force inside your chest, a quiet resolve settled over you. You weren't going to rush into the danger of the hunter exam anytime soon. You had years ahead of you. Years to build your strength, to understand this world's subtle rules, to learn the secret art of Nen from the ground up, and to carve out a life of your own before the future arrived. You picked up your bundle of firewood, wiped the mud from your knees, and began the long walk back to the sawmill. For survive, I need a plan. First I need to gather all informations. Where's the world is this? What years? What memories of this body? What life this body has? And you sat back against the wooden wall of Corin's shed, pulling your knees tight to your chest. The rain continued to beat a steady rhythm against the tin roof outside. Adrenaline was a terrible foundation for long-term survival. The brush with the spotted hound made one thing crystal clear: luck wouldn't keep an 8-year-old alive in the Hunter x Hunter universe. You needed clarity, structure, and an inventory of everything you currently possessed, starting with your own head. Closing your eyes, you focused inward, sifting through the foggy layers of your mind to separate your original memories from the quiet, faint impressions left behind by the boy whose body you now occupied. 1. Where in the world are you? Location: the continent of European. Local area: the outskirts of Oakhaven, a small, isolated logging settlement nestled in the foothills below the Zaban mountain range. Geographic context: you are roughly 200 kilometers north of Zaban City, which, in the future, serves as a primary hub for the Hunter exam. For now, however, it's just a massive, bustling industrial metropolis known for trade, shipping, and underworld syndicates. 2. What year is it? Current year, 1981. 3. Who was this boy? The memories of the body were faint, not a full narrative, but fragments of sensory experiences, feelings, and routine facts that slowly trickled into your consciousness. Identity and origins. Original name: Ren. Age: 8 years old. Status: orphan. His life before you arrived. The family: Ren lived with his mother and older brother in a small farming hamlet 3 days south. His mother succumbed to a sudden, severe lung illness during the harsh winter of 1980. His brother left shortly after to seek work in the mines of the Kaken Empire and never returned. The journey: left with no money to pay rent on their small plot of land, Ren spent the last 4 months wandering north towards Zaban City, surviving on scraps, small favors, and forage. His demise: the child died quietly of severe hypothermia, malnutrition, and physical exhaustion in the back of a lumber wagon 3 nights ago. That was the moment your soul took root in his body. Skills and muscle memory. High foraging instinct: Ren knew which wild mushrooms were safe, how to set crude wire snares for small birds, and how to spot freshwater springs. Literacy: basic. He could read simple road signs and numbers, but complex books or technical manuals were beyond him. Physical limits: frail, underweight, and lacking any martial training. However, living outdoors gave him high stamina for walking long distances and a decent tolerance for cold weather. 4. Current personal inventory and resources. Item condition/detail. Currency: 3 copper Jenny coins. Clothing: oversized wool coat, patched linen shirt, trousers with worn knees, wrapped leather boots. Tools: a dull pocket knife with a rusted hinge, a small broken brass compass, 3 meters of sturdy hemp twine. Shelter: a corner of Old Man Corin's sawmill tool shed. 5. Immediate survival objectives. Information is useless without an actionable strategy. 1. Physical recovery: you cannot build Nen or survive magical beasts with a malnourished frame. You need consistent food and calories. Corin's sawmill provides food, but it's barely enough. You must supplement your diet using Ren's foraging instincts. 2. Establish security and shelter: secure a semi-permanent arrangement with Korin. Become indispensable at the sawmill by using an adult's problem-solving skills in an 8-year-old's body. 3. Gather intelligence on nen and hunters. Keep an ear to the ground whenever travelers, mercenaries, or merchants stop in Oakhaven. You need to identify local martial arts dojos, wild beasts, or unusual individuals to figure out how to safely open your aura nodes without risking gun-style extreme trauma. The night air grows colder as the rain picks up. You huddle deeper into your coat, listening to the creaking wooden beams of the shed. You have a name, a baseline, and a timeline. Now, the real work begins. Alright, first I need recovery this body, and for that I need money, before I can establish security and shelter. Survival come first. I wonder what nation is this? I must know what exact date and where's my exact location to prepare the upcoming event in original timeline Hunter x Hunter world. You pull your coat tight, sitting down on a dry wooden plank inside the sawmill shed as the rain drums on the roof. Before you can make a single coin, you need exact bearings, not vague guesses. 1. Geographical identification and politics. Political entity, you are currently in the Republic of Kyukun. Reddit. Exact location, Oakhaven Village, situated in the southern foothills of the Vyska Forest Reserve. This region borders the massive highway system leading directly towards Aban City. Significance, Kyukun is a major trade hub on the central southern continent. Because it hosts Aban City, this nation naturally attracts mercenaries, contraband traders, and future hunter exam applicants. 3. The recovery phase, physical and financial strategy. An 8-year-old boy cannot earn high wages through manual labor alone. You need a fast, low-risk survival pipeline to secure calories and initial capital before winter hits in 2 months. Forage edible roots, sell processed timber bark, rent a heated room. Secure warm clothing, trap small woodland game. Immediate action plan. 1. Exploit body muscle memory. Oren's previous memories hold detailed knowledge of local flora. The Vyska foothills contain silvercap mushrooms and bitter root, both safe to boil into dense calorie broth. O. Set simple wire snares along animal tracks in the forest perimeter for small game. 2. Monetize sawmill waste. O. Old man Korin discards pine resin and oak bark during timber processing. O. Action. Collect discarded resin and boil it down to sell to local wagon drivers as water-resistant wheel axle grease. O. Target. Earn 15 to 20 jenny per day to buy grain, lard, and salt. 3. Upgrade physical baseline. O. Prioritize protein intake and basic body weight conditioning. O. Your goal is to transition from a malnourished orphan to a healthy, agile young boy before attempting any aura node manipulation. Surviving the winter. In 2 months, the temperatures in the foothills will drop below freezing. A drafty shed will lead to pneumonia. Your sole goal for the next 60 days is to save 500 jenny, enough to secure a heated room in Oakhaven's local boarding house through the cold season. Building the foundation. October 20th, 1981. 6 days had passed since you mapped out your immediate reality. 6 days of aching muscles, splinter-ridden fingers, and disciplined effort. Every morning began at 5 a.m., long before the cold mist lifted from the Vyska foothills. While old man Korin was still snoring in his quarters above the main mill, you were already at work. Your routine was brutal, but precise. 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., armed with Ren's ingrained knowledge, you checked 5 simple wire and string snares set along the oak thicket. You gathered dry bitter roots and wild watercress from the creek. 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., sweeping sawdust, stacking cedar planks, and clearing heavy timber scraps for Korin in exchange for your daily bowl of soup and access to the shed. 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., processing the waste products. The resin venture. Korin viewed tree resin and inner oak bark as trash, sticky clutter that gummed up his saw blades. To you, it was free inventory. Using a rusted iron pot you salvaged from the riverbed in a slow-burning pit fire behind the shed, you spent your evenings boiling down pine resin mixed with scraped tallow from Korin's butcher scraps. The result was a thick, dark, water-resistant grease ideal for coating wagon wheel axles and sealing leather boots against the upcoming winter slush. On Friday afternoon, the first merchant convoy bound for Zaban City rolled into Oakhaven's staging post. You stood by the lead wagon, holding 2 small clay jars sealed with wax. The driver, a burly man named Vane with dirt under his nails and a pipe clamped between his teeth, looked down at you with a scoff. "What do you want, kid? I don't have spare copper for beggars." "It's high-grade pine tallow grease, mister," you said, keeping your voice steady, respectful, but clear. "Seals axles against mud and stops rust on iron fittings. 2 jars for 12 Jenny. If it melts off or washes out before you hit Zaban, you can slap Corin at the sawmill next time you're through." Vane raised an eyebrow, taking one of the jars and running a thick thumb across the smooth grease inside. He sniffed it, then tested its viscosity between his fingers. "Corin's mill, huh? Didn't know that old mule hired an apprentice with a brain." He reached into his belt pouch and dropped 12 copper Jenny into your small palm. "If my wheels aren't squeaking by the time I hit the provincial border, I'll buy 4 more jars on my return loop next month." Physical status report, end of week 1. By October 27th, your physical condition had subtly shifted. The hollow look in your cheeks was softening, and the daily intake of wild protein alongside salted grain was beginning to rebuild your small frame. Body age, 8 years old. Physical condition, recovering. Total capital, 84 Jenny. Daily caloric average, 1,800 kcal. Aura/non status, dormant. Every night, before sleeping, you practiced sitting in complete stillness on your thin straw pallet. You didn't force your nodes open without a master or proper guidance. Forcing initiation ran a massive risk of severe aura hemorrhage, a mistake that could leave an 8-year-old crippled or dead. Instead, you practiced basic mental focus, controlling your breath, slowing your heart rate, and visualizing the warmth radiating from your core. You were laying the psychological groundwork for Nan long before ever releasing a drop of aura. The first hint of unrest. On the morning of November 2nd, as you were delivering a fresh pot of axle grease to the village blacksmith, a group of 3 men rode into Oakhaven on heavily lathered horses. They wore thick leather duster coats over steel chainmail vestments, carrying long rifles slung over their backs. They were mercenaries, bounty hunters from the Central Plains. They pinned a crude, hand-drawn paper poster to the Oakhaven Tavern bulletin board. You lingered by the edge of the crowd, your sharp young eyes reading the coarse print. Wanted, unknown armed group responsible for raiding trade carriages along the western Vyska Pass. Known to use unusual, unexplained weaponry, and sudden bursts of speed. Reward, 150,000 Jenny. The villagers murmured in low, anxious tones. Unexplained speed. They say one of them smashed a wooden cart axle with his bare fist. You stepped back slowly, blending into the shadow of the tavern's wooden overhang. 1981 wasn't just a peaceful background era before Gon's story. It was an unpoliced, wild decade where Ruzhnan users and unrefined martial artists roamed the outer provinces with total impunity, well out of reach of the Hunter Association's main headquarters. Winter was coming in 3 weeks. And the wild pass above your village was no longer safe. Chapter 4, First Winter. November 20th, 1981. Winter in the Vyska foothills did not arrive with a gentle dusting of snow. It came as a violent, howling north wind that swept down from the mountain peaks, turning the muddy roads of Oakhaven into iron-hard ruts and coating the cedar roofs in thick gray frost. By late November, the sawmill had effectively shut down. The mountain rivers froze over, halting the timber logs in their tracks, and old man Corin spent his days huddled by his iron stove, drinking warm spiced cider and grumbling about his aching joints. For you, survival became a game of strict arithmetic. Securing the sanctum. You knew that staying in the drafty tool shed through December would mean pneumonia, or worse. Using 420 Jenny of your hard-earned resin money, you struck a bargain with Mrs. Martha, a stern widow who ran a small boarding house near the village forge. For a modest sum and 4 hours of daily chores, splitting firewood, hauling heavy well water, and clearing snow from her roof, she granted you a tiny, unheated box room directly above her kitchen. It wasn't luxury. The ceiling was low, forcing you to stoop, but the heat rising through the floorboards from the kitchen hearth kept the room just above freezing. Total savings accumulated, 540 jenny. Paid to Mrs. Martha, minus 420 jenny. Remaining reserve, 120 jenny. Daily caloric baseline, 2,100 kilocalories. Your body was finally responding to regular food. The hollows under your eyes had filled out, your shoulder blades no longer protruded like knife edges beneath your skin, and your legs were growing lean and sturdy from daily physical labor. The silent discipline. With the sawmill closed and the village blanketed in heavy snow, time became your greatest asset. While other children in Oakhaven huddle near stoves or play briefly in the snow banks, you spent hours alone in your small room, laying the hidden foundation for what was to come. You could not safely force your aura nodes open without risking fatal aura leakage. You knew enough about Nen theory to understand that without a teacher or extreme natural talent, forced initiation at 8 years old could easily cripple you. Instead, you practiced meditation and breath control. 1 rhythmic respiration, inhaling for 6 seconds, holding for 6, exhaling for 6. Lowering your resting heart rate to conserve energy and heighten physical self-awareness. 2 sensory mapping, sitting in pitch darkness, listening to the creaking of the timber house, the whistling wind outside, and the distinct footsteps of people walking along the snow-covered street 50 yards away. 3 visualization, mentally focusing your internal body heat toward your core, then imagining distributing it evenly to your fingertips and toes to fight off the freezing cold. Without realizing it, you were engaging in rudimentary mental conditioning, the fundamental discipline required for 10 long before opening your aura nodes. A shadow on the pass. On a freezing morning in mid-December, a wagon dragged into the center of Oakhaven by 2 dying, frost-bitten horses. The cart was riddled with snapped arrows, and the canvas cover was torn to ribbons. Inside lay 2 wounded merchants from the north, shivering beneath bloody blankets. A crowd quickly gathered in front of the local apothecary. You pulled your wool coat tight around your chest and pushed through the outer edge of the villagers to listen. It was those bastards from the mountain pass, one of the surviving drivers gasped, his teeth chattering uncontrollably as the healer poured warm tonic down his throat. They didn't even care about the silk cargo. They just wanted the food stores and weapons. One man. He didn't even use a sword. He smashed our guard's shield in half with a single barehanded strike. The villagers gasped, whispering in hushed, terrified tones. Barehanded. No normal man can shatter iron-reinforced oak like that. You watched from the shadows, your eyes narrowed. A rogue user of basic shu or KO. In 1981, out here on the edges of civilized territory, law enforcement was sparse, and hunters were rare commodities usually hired by rich politicians or massive corporations. Outlaws with even a crude, instinctual grasp of aura could rule a mountain pass like minor gods. You looked down at your small, callus-free hands. You were 8 years old, still far too weak to face a rogue user, but the world wasn't going to wait for you to grow up. Winter had locked you in, but it was also giving you time. You turned away from the crowd, heading back to your room above the kitchen to continue your training. Chapter 5, The Thaw. The Vyska Foothills, early spring 1982. Sumber, Crayon. March 28, 1982. The relentless frost finally broke during the 3rd week of March. Snowpacks melted into roaring mountain runoff, swelling the creek near Oakhaven and turning the dusty forest floor into a rich, mossy loam. You survived your first winter in the Hunter x Hunter world not just intact, but noticeably transformed. Physical growth and milestones. 4 months of warm meals, disciplined breathing exercises, and daily physical chores had paid off. Age, 9 years old. Body metrics, height grew by nearly 3 centimeters, physical frame filled out with lean muscle. Mental focus, through your daily meditation routines, you developed sharp physical awareness. You could now sit still for 2 hours, maintaining a low resting heart rate while tracking ambient sounds, distant footsteps, bird calls, and river currents with absolute clarity. You were no longer the frail, dying boy old man Corin found in his lumber stack. The changing landscape. With the roads clearing, trade resumed, but the atmosphere in Oakhaven remained tense. The Mountain Pass raiders who had attacked the merchant convoy back in December were still at large. Spring brought fresh developments to the village. 1. The sawmill reopens. Old man Corin reopened his operation and, recognizing your reliability from the previous autumn, offered you a steady wage, 15 jenny per day plus a daily meal of hot stew and fresh bread. 2. Traveler rumors. Merchants arriving from Zaban City spoke of increased security along major provincial highways. The Hunter Association had reportedly dispatched a small squad of pro-hunters to investigate bandit activity in the northern Yorbian territory, a quiet reminder that the world's power structures were actively operating in the background. Age, 9 years old. Savings, 85 jenny. Daily income, 15 jenny/day plus snare game. Physical health, solid baseline. Current focus, strengthening tendons, physical flexibility, expanded meditation. The next move. Standing on a mossy ridge overlooking the Viska forest, you watched the logging wagons line up along the main road. Spring offered a window of stability. Your immediate physical survival was no longer in question, giving you the room to look ahead. You needed to transition from basic physical fitness toward true martial conditioning and eventually, finding a safe method to awaken your Nen nodes before you turned 10. How would you like Ren to proceed with his spring plans? Focus on physical training and martial fundamentals.
Chapter 6, Tempering the Vessel. April 15, 1982. A 9-year-old's body is a double-edged sword. On one hand, your bones and joints are remarkably pliable, capable of adapting to flexibility and stamina training at a rate adults can only dream of. On the other hand, heavy lifting or forced physical trauma can permanently stunt your growth or ruin your joints before you even reach adolescence. You knew better than to stack heavy stone slabs on your young spine. Instead, you built a regimen around body weight strength, explosive agility, and joint resilience. The training ground. Deep in the Viska forest, roughly a 20-minute jog from Corin's sawmill, you found a secluded clearing framed by ancient, thick-trunked oaks and smooth river boulders. A clear, mountain-fed stream ran along its western edge, providing cold water to drink and dunk your aching muscles into after every session. This became your private training ground. 4:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. Viska Forest Physical Regimen. 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Sawmill work. 4:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. Agility and balance training. 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Breath control and meditative visualization. The regimen, building functional power. 1. Conditioning and tendon strength. Tree branch pull UPS and muscle up progressions, starting with simple dead hangs to build grip strength vital for climbing and survival, then progressing to explosive pull UPS using thick, uneven oak branches. Riverbed push UPS, performing push UPS on soft river gravel to strengthen your wrists, fingers, and core stability. Single leg pistol squats, building leg drive, hip stability, and knee tendon strength without needing heavy external weights. 2. Agility and spatial awareness. Route running, sprinting across the forest floor at full speed, jumping over slippery, moss-covered tree roots and uneven terrain without breaking stride. Branch traversing, moving through the canopy 6 to 8 feet off the ground, learning to read branch flexibility, weight distribution, and momentum control. 3. Sensory sharpening. During agility drills, you blindfolded yourself with a strip of wool for 20 minutes at a time. Forced to rely entirely on sound, wind movement, and spatial intuition, you navigated the boulder field near the stream. Physical progress, early summer 1982. Height, 134 centimeters. Grip strength, exceptionally strong for age. Balance, mastered single leg stability on uneven surfaces. Energy pool, high stamina, low resting heart rate. The first breakthrough. By late June 1982, 3 months of relentless discipline had produced visible results. Your shoulders had broadened, your core was as tight as a bowstring, and your movements carried a quiet, fluid grace that stood in stark contrast to the awkward clumsiness of other 9-year-olds in the village. One hot afternoon, while returning from your forest clearing, a stray mountain pine hawk swooped low overhead, dropping a heavy, jagged pine cone directly toward your head. Without turning your head or breaking your stride, your left hand darted upward instinctively. Pwop! You caught the pine cone cleanly between 2 fingers, inches from your temple. You didn't see it with your eyes, you had felt the sudden displacement of air and the faint rustle of the wind. You stood still on the forest path, looking down at the pine cone in your small, dirt-caked hand. Your physical vessel was finally becoming strong, flexible, and responsive enough. You were ready for the next phase, finding a safe, deliberate way to awaken yearning. Next chapter, Encounter with Mercenary Group. Chapter 7, Iron in the Canopy. August 12, 1982. The summer heat made the air in the Viska forest thick with the smell of pine resin and ozone. You were 40 feet up in the canopy of an ancient cedar, perched motionless on a thick branch. Your legs were coiled, your breathing slowed to a barely audible whisper. For the past 2 hours, you had been practicing total physical stillness, learning to blend your heartbeat into the natural rhythm of the forest. Then, the birds stopped singing. A sudden, sharp rustle of underbrush echoed from the ravine below. Leaves crunched, followed by the dull metallic clink of rifle slings and leather boots. You pressed yourself flat against the cedar trunk, peering down through the dense green foliage. The Red Dog Company. A squad of 5 men filed into the clearing directly beneath your tree. They weren't local loggers or traders. They wore battered olive-drab tactical vests over sweat-stained shirts, heavy broadswords strapped to their backs, and bolt-action rifles slung across their chests. Their faces were weathered, scarred, and grim. Unidentified mercenary squad, visual assessment. Troop count, 5 combatants. Armament, military-grade bolt-action rifles, short swords, hunting knives. Demeanor, exhausted, alert, heavily disciplined. Affiliation, Red Dog Mercenary Group. Take 5 minutes, the leader grunted. He was a broad-shouldered man with a jagged scar across his jaw and a dirty red bandana tied around his neck. The Zaban patrol won't follow us this deep into the timber reserve. The men collapsed onto the mossy roots, swearing softly as they unbuckled their gear. Boss, a skinny scout with a rifle grumbled, wiping sweat from his forehead. That guy in the mountain pass back in July. He wasn't human. He caught 2 7.62 rounds right on his chest and just smiled. Then he tore Captain Vance's head off with his bare hands. Shut up, Jack, the scarred leader snapped, lighting a foul-smelling tobacco leaf. That was an user. An amateur who thinks he's a god because he unlocked his aura. The Hunter Association sent a scout to hunt him down, which is why we're laying low until the heat dies down. A fleeting glance of aura. Your heart thumped against your ribs, but your years of breath training kept your posture rock steady. None. They were talking about the rogue bandit from the Winter Pass and an incoming pro-hunter. If we run into a hunter, we're dead, another mercenary muttered, sharpening a hunting knife against a whetstone. We don't got no aura. We don't need aura, the leader hissed, tapping the wooden stock of his rifle. A bullet through the eye kills an user just fine if they aren't paying attention. Now drink your water and shut your traps. As the leader spoke, something extraordinary happened. In his frustration, the scarred leader slammed his fist against the root of the cedar tree you were hiding in. For a split second, a fraction of a flash, a faint, misty, translucent film of white light flared around his right knuckles. It wasn't a fully developed nin technique like Gyo or KO. It was an unconscious, violent leak of life force born from pure frustration, an instinctive burst of raw aura. Bang! The massive cedar root split down the middle with a sharp crack, spraying bark fragments into the air. The mercenaries went dead silent, staring at the split wood in shock. Even the leader looked down at his own knuckles, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and sudden, greedy realization. "Boss," the scout whispered. "Did you just say nothing?" the leader said, his voice dropping to a trembling whisper. "We rest for 10 minutes, then we move north to the old iron mine. We're setting up camp there." The stalker in the trees. From 40 feet above, you watched them pack their gear and vanish down the northern ridge toward the abandoned iron mines. You stayed frozen on your branch for a full 10 minutes after their footsteps faded, letting the forest noise return to normal before sliding silently down the cedar trunk. You looked at the split root. The wood fibers weren't shattered by mechanical force, they were burnt and splintered by an explosion of raw energy. The leader is on the verge of an accidental awakening, you realized, your mind racing. He doesn't know how to control it. If his nodes burst open during a fight without proper training, he'll either bleed his aura dry and die, or become a wild monster. More importantly, a 5-man armed mercenary unit had just set up an illegal camp 2 miles from Oak Haven, and a pro hunter from the association was likely tracking them. The peaceful training phase of your spring was officially over. Chapter 8, Shadows and Scrapes. August 15, 1982. You didn't run straight to Old Man Corin or the village elder. In a frontier town like Oak Haven, telling the adults that 5 heavily armed mercenaries were camping in the old iron mine would only spark a panic, or worse, prompt a foolish mob to go get themselves killed. Instead, you did what any 9-year-old in a world of monsters and hunters had to do: you gathered intelligence while staying invisible. Shadowing the Red Dogs. For 3 days, you used your agility and route running training to trail the mercenaries. You moved through the high canopy, keeping 50 yards between you and their perimeter. You kept your movements completely soundless, applying the sensory deprivation training you had practiced all spring. Reconnaissance log: abandoned Viska iron mine. Hostile force: 5 mercenaries. Leader status: unconscious aura leak. Camp defense: tripwire tin cans set up along main trail. Weakness: low on food, heavy paranoia, known and defense. The abandoned mine was a cavernous cut into the side of a granite cliff, surrounded by rusting mining tracks and rotting wooden support beams. The Red Dogs had made camp inside the entrance, using a campfire that bled thin, dark smoke through a natural chimney in the rock. The leader, whom the others called Vane, was growing increasingly unstable. From your high perch across the ravine, you watched through a pair of cheap brass opera glasses you had bought from a traveling peddler. Vane sat on a wooden crate, staring obsessively at his right hand. Every few hours, in a fit of rage or frustration, he would strike a wooden support beam. Sometimes nothing happened. But occasionally, another faint, misty flare of aura would erupt from his fist, splintering the oak. He was forcing his aura nodes open through sheer brute frustration, a process known as initiation via trauma. Without tent to hold the energy in, his body was slowly leaking its vital life force. You could see the dark circles deepening under his eyes, his skin turning a sickly ash gray. He was killing himself without even knowing it. The third party arrives. On the fourth evening, the atmospheric pressure in the forest suddenly plummeted. It wasn't rain weather. It was a suffocating, dense sensation like the air was turning to wet cement. Your heart slammed against your ribs, and the small hairs on the back of your neck stood straight up. You crouched low behind a granite boulder overlooking the ravine, holding your breath. Down on the main trail leading to the mine, a single figure emerged from the tree line. He didn't sneak. He walked openly, his hands shoved nonchalantly into the pockets of a tailored trench coat. He wore round, dark spectacles despite the twilight, and a thin silver chain hung from his lapel. A licensed hunter. He wasn't using Zetsu to hide his presence, he was deliberately releasing a tiny, controlled stream of 10A smooth, glass-like shroud of translucent energy resting millimeters above his skin. To normalize, he just looked like a sharp-dressed eccentric. But to your trained perception, he was glowing like a lantern in a pitch-black room. Unidentified licensed hunter, visual assessment. Type, blacklist hunter. Aura mastery, flawless, refined 10, steady aura density. Threat level, absolute. The climax at the mine entrance. Halt. Who's there? The Red Dog Lookout shouted from the mine entrance, swinging his bolt-action rifle around. The hunter didn't even slow down. Red Dog Company remnants. Responsible for 3 armed robberies and the murder of 2 provincial guards in the Western Pass. His voice was calm, almost bored. Lay down your arms. Shoot him, the scout screamed. Crack. Crack. 2 rifle shots echoed through the ravine, the flash of gunpowder lighting up the dusk. You watched, breathless. The lead bullet struck the hunter's chest and instantly dropped to the dirt with a dull clink, flattened like copper pancakes. They hadn't even torn his coat. The aura shroud around him hadn't even rippled. Basic non-defense, you thought, awe and terror surging through you in equal measure. Pure physical reinforcement. Before the mercenaries could reload, the hunter moved. He vanished from where he stood, a burst of pure speed that left a dust cloud in his wake and reappeared directly in front of the scout. A simple, light palm strike to the chest sent the scout flying backward 30 yards, crashing into the mine entrance with a sickening thud. In less than 40 seconds, 4 of the 5 mercenaries were unconscious on the ground. The final spark. Only Vane remained. Desperate, bleeding, and driven mad by fear, the scarred leader let out a blood-curdling roar. All the suppressed, chaotic energy in his body burst outward at once. Boom. A jagged, crimson aura erupted from Vane's body. His aura nodes blew wide open under the extreme threat of death. He lunged at the hunter, his fists coated in a jagged, uncontrolled mass of raw power. I'll kill you. Vane shrieked, his eyes bloodshot, blood pouring from his nose as his life energy leaked at an unsustainable rate. The hunter sighed, adjusting his glasses with his left hand while dodging Vane's clumsy, wild swing with a subtle shift of his weight. Forced node opening without training, the hunter said quietly. A sad way to go. With a swift, precise chop to the back of Vane's neck, the hunter knocked the mercenary leader cold. The chaotic crimson aura vanished instantly, leaving Vane crumpled on the gravel, breathing shallowly, his body rapidly losing energy as his open nodes leaked what little aura he had left. The encounter. The hunter stood alone among the defeated men. He reached into his coat, pulled out a pair of iron cuffs, and began securing the mercenaries. Then, without turning around, he spoke into the quiet evening air. You've been up on that granite ledge for 20 minutes, kid. Your breathing control is impressive for a baseline civilian, but your heart rate gave you away the moment the shooting started. He turned his head slightly, the fading sunlight reflecting off his round dark glasses. Come down here. Chapter 9, The Hunter. The wind carried the heavy smell of ozone and spent gunpowder across the ravine. Your heart pounded against your ribs, but you forced your breathing to stay slow, even, and deliberate. Climbing down from a granite ledge in front of an armed pro-hunter who had just casually bounced rifle rounds off his chest was suicide if you showed weakness. But running was worse. A blacklist hunter could catch a 9-year-old in 2 strides. You stepped out from the tree-line, your small leather boots making no sound on the gravel. I didn't mean any harm, sir, you said, keeping your voice calm, respectful, and entirely free of panic. I was tracking them because they were camping too close to my village. The hunter turned fully around. He was a tall, lean man with a short, neatly trimmed beard, wearing a dark tweed trench coat over a gray suit. His eyes behind the round, tinted spectacles were sharp, scanning your posture, your caked hands, and the relaxed way your weight rested on the balls of your feet. A village boy who moves like a cat and suppresses his breathing. The man adjusted his glasses, a faint smile touching his lips. What's your name, kid? Ren, you replied simply. And the village is Oak Haven, 2 miles south. The assessment. The hunter stepped over the unconscious body of Vane, walking toward you until he stopped 5 paces away. The oppressive aura that had filled the ravine moments ago had receded, pulled back into a smooth, invisible layer around his skin. He bent down, resting his hands on his knees so he was eye level with you. I'm Instructor Kale, a licensed blacklist hunter, he said quietly. Tell me, Ren. How long have you been watching these men? 4 days, you answered honestly. Since they made camp at the mine. I knew their patrol times, where they set their trip wires, and that their leader was losing his mind. Kale raised an eye. I didn't know what it was called, you lied smoothly, maintaining your cover as a talented provincial boy. Just that a strange, warm light kept flickered around his hands when he got angry. And that it was making him sick. Kale looked at you for a long, silent moment. Suddenly, he reached out with his right hand and tapped your forehead with 2 fingers. A tiny, gentle pulse of energy snapped through your forehead, not enough to force your nodes open, but enough to probe your physical condition. You felt a warm sensation ripple through your blood, like drinking hot tea on a freezing winter morning. Hunter assessment, Kale's observations. Physical baseline, exceptionally solid for a 9-year orphan. Tendon density, high, evident from forest agility conditioning. Mental focus, natural affinity for calmness under pressure. Aura nodes, fully closed, but sensitive to external energy. Kale pulled his hand back, a look of genuine surprise flickering across his face. Your body is balanced, Kale mused, standing back up to his full height. No forced node damage, no structural flaws. You've been training your breath and posture on your own, haven't you? I train in the woods every day, you said. To survive. A crossroad in 1982. Kale looked down at the 5 bound mercenaries, then back to you. He reached inside his inner coat pocket and pulled out a small, metallic silver card etched with intricate geometric patterns, a pro hunter license. That man, Kale pointed his thumb at Vane, attempted to force his nodes open out of desperation. Without proper instruction, that energy leaks until you die of exhaustion. It's a mistake fools make when they crave power without building the container first. He slid the card back into his coat. You, on the other hand. You built the container first. Kale walked back toward his bound prisoners, hauling 2 of them onto his shoulders with effortless strength. I have to take these bounties to the provincial garrison in Zaban City, Kale said over his shoulder. It will take me 3 days. But I'll be coming back through Oakhaven on my return trip. He stopped, turning his dark glasses back toward you. If you're still in that village in a week, Ren, I'll teach you how to open those doors properly. Don't go dying on a wild beast before then. Without waiting for your response, Kale vanished into the dusk, carrying the mercenaries like sacks of grain. You stood alone in the quiet ravine, the autumn wind rustling the trees overhead. Your patience had paid off. You didn't have to risk breaking your own nodes or searching for a shady martial arts school. A licensed pro hunter had just offered to teach Yunnan. Next chapter. Kale asked me to join him. He want to train me. But my body is still weak, he say need at least 2 to 3 years before I can use the mysterious energy that Kalnan. Chapter 10, The Offer on the Porch. August 22, 1982. 7 days later, exactly as promised, Kale returned to Oakhaven. He didn't make a grand entrance. He sat quietly on the wooden steps outside Mrs. Martha's boarding house, sipping tea from a chipped clay mug while the afternoon sun dipped behind the western peaks. When you walked up the stone path after your shift at the sawmill, he gestured for you to sit on the step beside him. The provincial garrison accepted the Red Dog bounties, Kale said, staring out at the dusty village road. Paid out clean. The leader, Vane. He didn't survive the trip to Zaban. His body bled out its aura before the medics could seal his nodes. A waste. He set his mug down, the ceramic clicking softly against the wood. Then, he turned his dark spectacles toward you. Tell me about yourself, Ren. Who are you? Where are your people? You looked down at your hands scarred from timber work, calloused from rope climbs, but steady. I'm an orphan, you said simply, your voice even. My mother died of fever 2 winters ago. My brother went to the Kaken mines and never came back. I have no family, no connections, and no home outside of a corner in Corin's shed and a rented box room here. I'm just alone in this world. Kale listened without pity or judgment, the quiet, practical silence of a man who had seen thousands of orphans across the continent. The reality check. I thought about taking you as an apprentice, Kale said directly. You have sharp instincts, a good heart, and you built a solid physical foundation on your own. But let's be clear about one thing, your body is still weak. He tapped your shoulder with a single finger, pressing just enough for you to feel the sheer density of his frame beneath his suit. You're 9 years old, Ren. Your bones are still forming. If I force your aura nodes open now, or if I push you through high-level Nen training before your physical frame matures, your growth will stunt. Your joints will wear out by 20, and the first serious Nen user who hits you with Shu will shatter you like glass. He held up 3 fingers. 2 to 3 years. That's what you need. 3 years of dedicated physical conditioning, diet, martial fundamentals, and mental discipline before you even touch the mysterious energy we call Nen. No shortcuts. No forced awakenings. Kale's proposed roadmap. Age 9 to 11, physical conditioning and martial arts. Core strength, flexibility, joint resilience. Basic hand-to-hand fundamentals. Wilderness survival and travel conditioning. Age 12, controlled aura awakening. Meditative node opening. Basic principles, 10, Zetsu, Ren, Hatsu. The decision. Kale stood up, dusting off his trench coat. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a train ticket stamped with the logo of the Central European Railway. I don't stay in backwater logging towns, kid. My work as a blacklist hunter takes me across the eastern provinces from Zaban City to the martial arts hubs in the south. He extended his hand toward you, the train ticket held between his fingers. You can stay here in Oakhaven, work at the sawmill, and live a quiet, safe life. Or you can pack your wool coat, come with me, and spend the next 3 years letting me break you down and rebuild you into a proper fighter. What's it going to be? You looked at the silver ticket, then back up at the hunter standing in the fading dusk light. The logging village had served its purpose. You had survived the winter, recovered your health, and built your baseline strength. But 1981 was slipping into 1982, and the world outside was waiting. You reached out your small hand and took the ticket. Chapter 11, Farewell to Oakhaven. August 25, 1982. Before you turned your back on the Vyska foothills, there were debts to pay and quiet goodbyes to speak. The hill behind the ridge. Early in the morning, while the fog still clung to the pine needles, you walked 3 miles south to a small, unmarked mound of dirt beneath a wild mountain rowan tree. It was where Ren had buried his mother 2 winters ago, alone in the freezing dirt, before his own body gave out in the back of Corin's lumber wagon. You knelt down in the damp moss, pulling a small handful of fresh, blue mountain wildflowers from your coat pocket and laying them gently against the root of the tree. "Thank you," you whispered into the morning silence. You were speaking to 2 souls, to the woman buried beneath the earth who had fought to keep her son alive. And to Ren himself, the frail 8-year-old boy whose quiet passing had granted you a second chance at life in this dangerous, magnificent world. "I'll carry this body well," you said softly, bowing your head. "I won't let it die young again." Settling accounts. By noon, you were back in Oakhaven, making your final rounds through the dusty logging town. Final Oakhaven settlement. To old man Corin, returned his iron pot and leather apron. Gifted him 50 jenny as thanks for the shelter. To Mrs. Martha, paid out your remaining room balance. Cleaned her chimney and stacked 3 weeks of firewood. Remaining capital, 45 jenny. Old man Corin stood in the doorway of the sawmill, wiping his sawdust-covered hands on his trousers as he watched you pack your small canvas duffel bag. "You're a strange kid, Ren," Corin grunted, his gruff voice carrying a rare trace of warmth. "Smarter than any 8-year-old has a right to be. Don't go getting yourself eaten by wild beasts out there in the big cities." "I won't, Mr. Corin," you smiled, shaking his rough hand. "Thanks for the turnip soup." Mrs. Martha handed you a small parcel wrapped in waxed paper, a block of dried beef and 2 fresh loaves of rye bread for the road. "Keep your coat buttoned, child. The trains get cold at night." The platform at Zaban Junction. By late afternoon, you were standing beside Kale on the wooden boarding platform of the Zaban Provincial Station. The massive steam locomotive hissed loudly, releasing plumes of white vapor into the cooling summer air. Kale stood with his hands in his trench coat pockets, looking down at you with a slight nod of approval as he noticed your light, balanced posture and tightly packed gear. "No tears?" Kale asked dryly as the train whistle echoed across the valley. "No," you said, looking out at the long iron tracks stretching toward the horizon. "Just the road ahead." A vessel prepared. You stepped onto the iron train car, leaving the quiet logging village of Oakhaven behind forever. The year was 1982. You had survived your first year as a reincarnated orphan, rebuilt a broken body, secured a mentor in a pro hunter, and carved out a clear path forward. You had 3 years of relentless training ahead of you before your nen would ever be awakened, 3 years to build the muscle, the mind, and the martial foundation required to survive in a world where monsters, assassins, and gods walked among men. As the train rattled forward toward the southern martial hubs, you leaned your forehead against the cool glass window, watching the Visca Mountains fade into the distance. The journey had finally begun. Chapter 12, The Wandering Crucible. The Wilderness of the European Frontier. Sumber, Brimfield. Late 1982, Spring 1983. Kale didn't take you to a comfortable city dojo with polished hardwood floors and padded mats. Instead, he bought 2 tickets to the end of the line, the southern border of the European continent, and pointed toward the horizon. A fighter who only knows how to train inside 4 walls is just an athlete, Kale told you as he tossed a 15-kilogram canvas pack onto your back. A hunter survives anywhere. For the next year, the world is your gym. Phase 1, the Wilderness Curriculum. Traveling on foot alongside a pro hunter was a masterclass in field survival. You traversed dense subtropical rainforests, rocky canyonlands, and treacherous wetlands. Kale rarely stepped in to help. He acted as an evaluator, walking 50 paces behind you with his hands in his pockets, watching every step you took. Survival Knowledge and Biological Index. Flora Identification. Moon lily root, high starch, safe to eat raw, numbs mild pain. Red vein fern, toxic if boiled, sap deters blood-sucking insects. Iron bark sap, applied to skin to prevent blistering and frostbite. Magical beast profiling. Marsh prowler, amphibious stalker, blind to motion if you hold your breath. Greythorn owl, hunts by thermal vibration, requires complete physical stillness. Armored boar, thick hides resist blunt hits, weak point behind the jaw joint. You learn to read the ecosystem's subtle language, the sudden hush of canopy birds warning of an approaching predator, the shift in air moisture preceding a flash flood, and the faint scent of copper that marked a carnivorous beast's territory. Phase 2, Conditioning through Adaptation. Training wasn't structured into rigid hourly sets, it was woven directly into your daily survival. Weighted mobility, carrying your heavy pack while traversing slippery river rocks and climbing sheer granite cliffs built deep joint stability, core power, and calf endurance. Forced efficiency, if you misread a trail or failed to secure fresh water by nightfall, you slept thirsty. The immediate consequences forced your adult mind to plan with meticulous precision, while your 9-year-old body adapted with incredible speed. Thermal tolerance, moving through humid swamp basins by day and freezing high-altitude mountain passes by night hardened your nervous system and immune response. Chapter 13, The Lesson at the Ravine. In May 1983, while crossing the Garrel Swamp, you were ambushed by a pair of gripclaw apes, vicious, 5-foot-tall beasts with hide-like toughened leather. You didn't panic. You didn't wait for Kale. Using your low center of gravity, you ducked beneath the lead ape's wild swing, drew your heavy hunting knife, and drove it precisely into the nerve cluster behind its knee, a anatomical weak point Kale had quizzed you on 3 weeks prior. As the beast collapsed, you used its momentum to leap up, vault off a mossy tree trunk, and plant a hard sidekick directly into the second ape's windpipe. The entire scuffle lasted less than 8 seconds. Kale strolled out from the shadow of the cypress trees, looking at the fallen beasts and then down at you. You were breathing steadily, your hands unfazed, your stance perfectly balanced. Good, Kale said, adjusting his dark glasses. You didn't waste a single calorie on useless movement. You're stopping thinking like a civilian. He looked up toward the mountain ridge rising in the distance, the path leading toward the southern provinces. Your body is adapting faster than I expected, Ren. 1 more year of refining your movement, and the vessel will finally be ready. Chapter 14, Opening the Gates. Early November 1983. The crisp autumn air in Dentura had turned sharp and biting. Frost coated the windows of Kale's rented apartment as the late morning sun strained to warm the quiet room. All the furniture had been moved to the perimeter, leaving a wide, empty wooden floor. Kale stood across from you, his hands shoved deep into his trench coat pockets, his dark glasses catching the dull gray light outside. "You've proven yourself in the pit, Ren," Kale said, his voice dropping into a grave, formal tone. "You've built the vessel. Your mind is sharp, your body is balanced, and you handle human conflict without losing your composure. The time has come." He stepped closer, resting a single heavy hand on your shoulder. "What I am about to teach you is the world's most closely guarded secret. It is called the ability to manipulate your own life energy, or aura. The theoretical mastery." To Kale's absolute astonishment, you didn't look confused, scared, or overwhelmed. While he spent the first week carefully explaining the concept of aura nodes, the flow of vital energy, and the four great principles, you absorbed it instantly like a sponge. 10. Focusing aura around the body for defense, vitality, and slowing down aging. Zetsu, completely closing all aura nodes to stop the energy flow, mask presence, and recover from fatigue. Ren, emitting a massive, intense burst of aura to build raw power. Hatsu, the personal, unique expression of one's aura type. "Of course I know it," you thought, maintaining a serious, deeply attentive expression as Kale lectured. "I spent countless hours reading Togashi's manga, analyzing panels, studying the Nen chart, and scrolling through the Hunter x Hunter fandom wiki in my past life." You knew the mechanics inside and out. You understood Gyo, In, En, Shu, Ko, Ken, and Ryu. You knew about aura output limits, the water divination test, Nen categories, constraints, and deadly vows. But knowing the theoretical physics of aura from a screen or page wasn't the same as channeling it through your own blood and bone. Now, you had to actually feel it. The initiation, meditation over trauma. Kale refused to use the quick, brutal method where an user blasts open a student's nodes with aggressive aura. "That method is for fools, desperate mercenaries, and savages," Kale grunted. "We do this the right way through meditation and awakening." Throughout November, Kale guided you through painstaking daily energy exercises. 1 Node sensitivity, sitting cross-legged for hours on the hard floor, feeling the thousands of microvalves of energy scattered across your skin. 2 Aura channeling, Kale placed his palm gently against your upper spine, pouring a needle-thin, steady thread of his own refined ten into your body to act as a pathfinder for your own dormant energy. 3 Valve control, slowly, deliberately unlocking the nodes starting from the crown of your head down to your toes, without letting the energy violently erupt. On November 26, 1983, it finally happened. The awakening. It didn't feel like an explosion. It felt like stepping out of a freezing mountain blizzard into a deep, scalding hot spring. A soft, brilliant, translucent white mist erupted from every pore of your body. The air in the room grew instantly heavy, shimmering with visible heat waves. You could feel every drop of your life force surging up from your core, flowing out through your skin, and beginning to scatter into the cold room. Good. Now don't let it bleed away. Kale commanded sharply. Visualize a warm cloak. Hold the energy right against your skin. 10. You closed your eyes, taking a deep, rhythmic breath. Using the visualization techniques you had practiced back during the freezing Vyska winter of 81, you imagined your aura as smooth, warm wax, clinging to your skin, forming a tight, 1-inch bubble around your entire frame. The chaotic flickering stopped instantly. The aura smoothed out into a flawless, glass-like shroud. Kale froze. He stared at you, his jaw slightly dropping behind his dark glasses. Normally, a beginner takes weeks just to stabilize 10 without suffering severe physical exhaustion from aura leakage. But you were holding a near-perfect, rock-steady shroud on your very first day. Ren's initial NIN progress, late November 1983. Status, nodes awakened. Current technique, 10. Aura reserve, modest, but extremely efficient. Mental state, calm, disciplined, fully conscious. Kale slowly walked in a circle around you, observing the quiet, steady hum of your aura shroud. Unbelievable. Kale whispered, shaking his head in total disbelief. Your control. It's like your soul already knew how to do this. You opened your eyes, looking down at your glowing, energy-wrapped hands. You didn't say a word. You just offered a calm, steady smile. The secret remained yours alone. You were 11 years old, standing in November 1983, with open nodes, rock-solid fundamental control, and 16 years to prepare before Gone Freaks would ever step foot on the Hunter exam grounds. Chapter 15, The Ledger and the Eyes Above. Late November 1983. That night, after Kale had retired to his room, you sat cross-legged on your simple bed in the dark. The city of Dentura hummed outside your window, but inside, your focus turned entirely inward. For the first time since awakening your nodes, you called upon 10 in complete isolation. A soft, pale shroud of life energy enveloped your 11-year-old frame, warm, silent, and steady as a heartbeat. In the privacy of your own mind, you audited your progress. Ren status assessment, late 1983. Age, 11 years old. Physical frame, lean, dense musculature, highly resilient joints. Martial base, field survival, route running, practical street fighting. NEN mastery and advancement. Nodes, fully awakened. 10, high mastery. Zetsu, intermediate. Ren, novice. Hatsu, unawakened. Hidden assets. Transmigrator knowledge. Adult mindset. You knew you were still far from the true monsters of this world. You couldn't compete with a Phantom Troop member or a Zaldik assassin, yet your total aura pool was still bounded by your young physical body. But the container was built, the energy was unlocked, and you had 16 years of runway before the canon timeline truly kicked off. Satisfied, you drew your aura back into your body, falling into a quiet, deep sleep. In the shadows of the association. What you didn't know was that while you slept, Kale sat at his small wooden desk in the kitchen, a single brass lamp illuminating a sealed document stamped with the official emblem of the Hunter Association. 2 years ago, when Kale first encountered you in the Vyska forest after hunting down the Red Dog mercenaries, he hadn't just stumbled upon a local orphan by accident. As a licensed blacklist hunter, Kale was bound by association protocol. Taking on an unawakened civilian child, especially one with frighteningly sharp instincts, required explicit permission from higher authorities. He had filed an initial report back in 1982 to the association's evaluation board, directly overseen by Chairman Isaac Netaro's inner circle. The directive given to Kale was simple: observe the boy. Gauge his intent. Determine if he possesses the spirit of a hunter or the seeds of a threat. Decide if he is worthy to hold NEN. Now, with your nodes opened and your fundamental control demonstrated, Kale uncapped his fountain pen and wrote his final assessment. Hunter Association Candidate Evaluation Report. 2. xhunter Association Assessment Board Office of the Chairman. From, Instructor Kale, Blacklist xhunter, Rank 2. Subject, Evaluation of Candidate Ren Oakhaven European Continent. Date, November 28, 1983. 1. Physical and martial assessment. Candidate possesses exceptional physical adaptability. Built a flawless conditioning baseline prior to an initiation. Demonstrates extreme efficiency in combat, no wasted movement, high tactical awareness, and calm composure against superior physical opponents. 2. Intellectual and social fit. Remarkable adaptability. Blends into urban environments seamlessly. Shows advanced literacy, financial competence, and emotional discipline far exceeding his age. Shows no signs of malice, sadism, or wild instability. 3. Nen awakening and potential. Initiation completed via meditation/awakening on November 26, 1983. Node control was established instantly. Maintained a complete, stable 10 shroud on his first attempt. Aura control efficiency is absurdly high, bordering on abnormal. Conclusion. Candidate Ren is not a threat to public safety. He possesses the mind of a veteran strategist in the body of a child. I recommend full approval for continued private instruction. He is worthy to walk the path. Signed, Kale. Kale folded the parchment, sealed it with crimson wax, and pressed his xhunter license into the hot stamp. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out toward the dark horizon in the direction of the association headquarters. He's going to surprise all of you, Kale muttered quietly to the night air, sliding the sealed letter into his trench coat. Chapter 16, The Mastery of the Four Fundamentals. December 1983. Winter settled deeply over Dentura, bringing silent snowfalls that blanketed the gray industrial rooftops. Inside the apartment, the stove burned low, but you didn't feel the chill. Wrapped in your shroud of 10, your body remained naturally warm, healthy, and energized. Every living being produces life energy. It is vital for survival, intrinsically bound to a person's stamina and physical health. The pores from which this energy leaks into the universe are the aura nodes. To the uninitiated, this energy is entirely invisible. It can only be seen once the nodes in the eyes are opened, though sensitive individuals might feel a sudden chill or a subtle pressure in the air when a powerful aura flares nearby. Because Nen allows a trained user to craft an endless variety of paranormal abilities, it remains a dangerous secret, strictly kept hidden from the public to maintain societal balance. Throughout December, Kale put you through rigorous, daily drills to test and refine your mastery over the four great principles. The four great principles, December drills. 10. Holding aura tightly around your skin to prevent leakage. Drill maintaining 10 for 8 continuous hours while reading or sleeping. Zetsu. Completely sealing all aura nodes to erase your presence. Drill shadowing Kale through crowded city markets without catching his eye. Ren. Opening nodes wide to erupt a massive, dense quantity of aura. Drill pushing aura output to the absolute limit against Kale's palm pressure. The natural affinity, where do you excel? One evening, after 4 hours of continuous drills, Kale had you demonstrate all 3 techniques in sequence. When you performed Ren, your aura flared impressively for an 11-year-old, but within 6 minutes, your small body showed signs of physical fatigue. Your total aura reservoir was still constrained by your young physical frame. When you performed 10, your shroud was clean, uniform, and held with effortless ease. but when you performed Zetsu, something extraordinary happened. You closed your eyes, took a single breath, and snapped every node across your body shut. Your aura vanished instantly, not like a lamp being dimmed, but like a light bulb being smashed out. Your body temperature dropped slightly, your heart rate slowed to a quiet crawl, and your presence in the room erased so thoroughly that the apartment felt completely empty. Kale, standing just 3 feet in front of you, closed his eyes and tried to sense you. He couldn't. Even with his years of blacklist hunter experience, if he hadn't been looking directly at you with his eyes, he would have sworn you had vanished into thin air. My natural affinity is Zetsu, you realized, opening your eyes and letting your breath out slowly. Your years as a quiet, observant office worker in your past life combined with your months of hiding in trees and practicing sensory deprivation in the Vizca forest had gifted you an absurd, near supernatural talent for hiding your presence. Kale's internal assessment, the 4 proficiency ranks. Late that night, Kale sat at the table, taking notes in his personal journal while watching you rest. In the secret doctrine of Nen instruction, masters measure a student's proficiency across 4 distinct ranks. NEN proficiency rankings. 1. Skillful, solid understanding, reliable execution. 2. Excellent, superior precision, fast reaction, high output. 3. Natural, innate, intuitive mastery, effortless application. 4. Extreme, the absolute peak of human mastery. Kale tapped his pen against his chin, evaluating where your fundamental skills currently rested according to these criteria. Kale's evaluation of Ren's proficiency, December 1983. 10. Excellent. Performs with near zero energy waste. Holds a smooth, 1-inch shroud for hours. Ren, skillful. Solid technique and intent, but physically limited by an 11-yo aura pool. Zetsu, natural. Frightening level of mastery. Shuts down nodes instantly with zero lag. His Zetsu isn't just hiding presence, it is a complete, ghost-like erasure. Kale closed his journal with a heavy snap, his dark glasses reflecting the faint firelight. A 10-year-old with a natural proficiency in Zetsu, Kale whispered to himself, a cold shiver running down his spine. If this boy ever decides to become an assassin, nobody in the world would hear him coming. He looked over at you sleeping soundly on your cot. You were 11 years old, armed with transmigrator knowledge, holding an excellent rating in 10 and a natural talent in Zetsu. The foundation was no longer just solid, it was lethal. Chapter 17, The Unbearable Genius. Late 1983. Time moved with terrifying speed once Nen entered the equation. You turned 11, your stature filling out into a wiry, dense build, your movements so naturally quiet that even street cats in Dentora didn't flinch when you walked past them. In late 1983, Kale received an emergency summons from the Blacklist Hunter Division, a high-stakes target tracking operation across the western continent that would take him away for 4 to 5 months. "I'm not leaving you alone to idle," Kale told you as he packed his leather kit. "I'm handing you off to an acquaintance of mine who happens to be in the region. He's unconventional, but as an teacher and a hunter, there is no one better alive." When you stepped off the train in the arid wilderness near the Kaken border, you met Kale's acquaintance. Unkempt dark hair, a battered turban wrapped lazily around his head, a scruffy jaw, and a pair of dirty cloth shoes. He was leaning against a wooden crate, chewing on a piece of dried meat and staring into space. Jing freaks. The internal screaming. Fuck. Your inner monologue went into absolute meltdown the second your eyes locked onto him. Of all the people in this universe, Kale knows Jing freaks. To the world, Jing was currently a 16-year-old rising star in the Xhunter Association, a double-star caliber genius who had passed the 267th Xhunter exam as the sole survivor 4 years prior. To you, an Isekai transmigrator who had read Togashi's manga and devoured Xhunter x Xhunter wiki articles in your past life, Jing was a legendary figure. He was also an absolute, unmitigated nightmare of a human being. A selfish, reckless, rotten-mannered, brilliant, erratic lunatic who abandoned his future kid, dodged every administrative duty, and moved like an unpredictable whirlwind. So this is the kid, Kale. Jing grunted without standing up, wiping grease off his chin with the back of his hand. Looks small. Does he even know how to dig a trench? His name is Ren, Kale sighed, handing Jing a leather envelope, likely your assessment files. He's got solid fundamentals. Don't break him. Yeah. Whatever. Get lost, Kale, you're kicking up dust. Jing waved his hand dismissively. Kale gave you a look that said good luck, kid, and vanished down the trail. The excavation nightmare. You knew the timeline. Right around 1982 to 1983, Jing had set up his famous non-profit organization to research, restore, and preserve an ancient royal burial ground using his own fortune. He was currently leading a team of archaeologists, engineers, and heavy workers deep in the desert ruins. And you were his new unpaid intern. Listen up, kid, Jing grunted, slinging a shovel over his shoulder as he marched toward the colossal underground stone arches of the royal tomb. I don't care how good your 10 is. In my camp, if you don't work, you don't eat. And if you ruin a single fresco on the stone walls, I'll throw you into the trap pits. Camp log, Royal Burial Ground excavation. Lead hunter, Jing Freaks. Ren's assignment, field apprentice/human sonar. Daily routine, 12 hours shovel work plus high-stress NAN drills. The Freaks training method. Training with Jing wasn't structured. It was an erratic, chaotic trial by fire. He didn't teach you NAN theory like Kale did. He expected you to figure things out on the fly while dodging collapsing stone ceilings and navigating ancient lethal traps. Applied Ren under pressure, while excavating unstable subterranean chambers, Jing would randomly blast a wave of raw, crushing aura across the cavern just to see if your 10 could hold up against the air pressure without your posture collapsing. Aura echolocation, stop using your eyes, idiot, Jing would yell, tossing a rock at the back of your head while you were digging in pitch-black tunnels. Feel the displaced air currents with your aura. If you can't sense a dart trap before it trips, you deserve the poison. Intuitive mimicry, watching Jing work was infuriating. He could look at an ancient NAN trap mechanism once, understand its aura flow, and replicate or neutralize it in seconds. You're too stiff, Ren. Jing shouted one afternoon, sitting on top of a 3-ton granite sarcophagus while eating a cold turnip. You handle your aura like an office clerk handling ledgers. Aura isn't a spreadsheet, you idiot. It's an extension of your instinct. Let it breathe. You almost choked on your own saliva. If only you knew, you feral freak. I was an office clerk. Month by month. Month after month, you endured the madness. You slept in dusty tents, ate burnt stew, hauled heavy stone tablets, and constantly dodged Jing's sudden, unpredictable tests. If you lowered your guard for a single second, a pelted stone or a minor aura shockwave would slam into your ribs. But despite his rotten personality, lazy demeanor, and infuriating arrogance, Jing was a terrifying genius. Under his harsh, chaotic guidance, your application of NAN transformed. You stopped merely controlling your aura like a rigid technique. You started feeling it as a fluid, living part of your body. Your zetsu became so clean that even inside the echoey stone tombs, you could melt into the shadows without triggering ancient aura-sensitive traps. One night, as the campfires flickered outside the ancient tomb entrance, Jing sat across from you, staring at the detailed blueprint of the ruin's lower level that you had just redrawn from memory. Jing scratched his messy hair, squinting at your precise, highly organized diagram. "You're a strange kid, Ren," Jing muttered, a rare, sharp glint appearing in his dark eyes. "You act like a polite little student, but deep inside, you're calculating everything. You look at this world like you're reading a map someone else drew." Your heart skipped a beat, but your zetsu held dead steady. You just wiped the dirt off your shovel and offered a quiet, innocent smile. "I'm just trying to keep up with you, Mr. Jing." "Don't call me Mr. Jing, it sounds disgusting," he grunted, tossing a piece of bread at your face. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we're opening the flooded lower vault." The year 1983 was drawing to a close. You were 11 years old, surviving the tutelage of one of the top 5 nin users on the planet, and forging a foundation that no ordinary child in this world could ever dream of holding. Chapter 18, Month 1, The Crucible of the Freak. January 1984. The first 30 days with Jing Freaks weren't a training course. They were a prolonged, high-stress survival experiment where you were both the lab rat and the test subject. The excavation site was set in the high-altitude, wind-scoured badlands near the Kaken border. By day, the sun beat down with blistering heat. By night, the desert air plummeted below freezing. Jing's camp consisted of a few canvas tents, heavy wooden crates, and an endless array of shovels, pickaxes, and surveying gear. And from day one, Jing had zero interest in pacing you. Week 1 and 2, the physical torture of apprenticeship. "If you can't carry your own weight, I'm rolling you up in a rug and dropping you at the nearest train station," Jing warned on your first morning, tossing a heavy brass surveying transit and a 50-pound crate of iron stakes into your arms. While his hired team of local diggers handled the broad dirt moving, Jing made you his personal mule. You spent 12 hours a day hauling stone fragments up steep subterranean shafts, holding heavy surveying poles in sub-zero winds, and manually clearing ancient drainage channels filled with razor-sharp silt. Jing's unofficial first-month regimen. 5 a.m., manual haulage of ancient stone slabs. 9 a.m., precision drafting of vault blueprints under time pressure. 1 p.m., trench digging through sun-baked granite clay. 6 p.m., surprise attacks. 10 p.m., night watch in Zetsu while monitoring desert fauna. Your adult mind screamed in frustration every single hour. "I used to complain about 8-hour desk shifts with ergonomic chairs," you thought, wiping mud, sweat, and limestone dust from your forehead while hauling a bucket of wet gravel. "This guy makes corporate sweatshops look like a luxury spa." Week 3, the surprise nin drills. Jing didn't sit down to teach you theory. He tested your instincts through relentless, petty harassment. While you were bent over a drawing board trying to transcribe ancient glyphs, a golf ball-sized granite chunk would come whistling through the air at 60 miles an hour, aimed directly at the back of your head. "Maintain your 10, kid," Jing would holler from 20 paces away, idly tossing another rock in his hand. If your aura shroud collapses every time you focus on reading, an enemy assassin is going to turn your head into a water balloon. You had to learn how to keep a uniform, protective aura bubble active subconsciously while performing delicate, high-concentration work. By the third week, your body developed a reflexive defensive trigger. The second air pressure shifted behind you, your 10 flared instinctively, catching Jing's thrown stones with a dull thud against your aura shield. "Not bad," Jing grunted, chewing on a piece of dried beef. "Still too slow, but at least your skull isn't cracked." Week 4, the tunnels of the dead. By the end of January, the dig reached the entrance of the first antechamber, a buried tomb sealed for over 700 years. The air inside was thick with toxic gas, mold, and ancient, residual traps set by the royal architects. "All right, Ren," Jing said, leaning against the damp stone archway with a torch in his hand. "The air down there will choke a normal man in 5 minutes. And the floor is rigged with pressure plates that trigger poison darts." He pushed you forward by your shoulder. "Go mapping. Use Zetsu to keep the trap sensors from picking up your life force, and use your breath control to survive the gas. You have 20 minutes. "You crazy, irresponsible bastard," you swore mentally, taking a deep breath and stepping into the pitch-black stone tunnel. You snapped your nodes shut into a flawless, ghost-like Zetsu. Your heart rate slowed to a quiet, rhythmic thrum. Slipping through the dark, damp corridor, your small feet made zero sound against the flagstones. You read the ancient mechanical seams on the walls, dodged the subtle pressure tiles, and mapped the entire 30-meter hallway in complete darkness. When you emerged 20 minutes later, damp with cold sweat but completely unharmed, Jing was standing there holding a hot mug of chicory tea. He looked at your detailed mental map, then looked down at you. His dark eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of real, undeniable respect passing through his messy, unwashed face. "You didn't trip a single plate," Jing mused, scratching his jaw. "Your Zetsu is unnatural, kid. Most adults bleed energy when they get scared. You just turn into a rock." "I was trying not to die, Mr. Jing," you said, your voice completely flat, exhausted, and deadpan. "TCH. I told you not to call me Mr. Jing," he grunted, tossing you the mug of tea. "Drink up. Tomorrow we're unsealing the main sarcophagus." You sat down on a wooden crate, sipping the hot, bitter tea in the freezing desert night. Month 1 was over. You had survived the freak. Chapter 19, Month 2, Advanced Mechanics and Bad Language. February 1984. By the second month at the excavation site, the physical toil had become second nature. But Jing wasn't done with you. Once he realized your Zetsu and Basic 10 were rock solid, he decided it was time to crash course you through the advanced Nin applications. And because it was Jing Freaks, there were no lectures, no textbooks, and no safety nets. The crash course, 7 techniques. "Listen up, kid," Jing grunted one morning, standing in the middle of a newly unsealed underground ceremonial chamber. He held an ancient, stone-headed ceremonial mace in one hand. "The 4 basics 10, Zetsu, Ren, Hatsu are just your legs. Now I'm gonna teach you how to run, jump, and punch." Over the next 4 weeks, Jing forced you through the 7 advanced principles. Advanced NEN Applications Index. 1 Gyo, concentrating aura into specific body parts. 2 In, an advanced form of Zetsu to make active Hatsu/aura invisible. 3 En, extending aura outward to form a sensory radar sphere. 4 Shu, extending aura into an object to turn it into an extension of your body. 5 Ko, combining 10, Ren, Zetsu, Gyo, and Hatsu to concentrate 100% aura into one point. 6 Ken, an advanced defensive stance maintaining high output Ren for extended defense. 7 Ryu, real-time aura redistribution during combat. The trial, fuck you, Jing. The practical training was pure, concentrated agony. To teach you Gyo, Jing hid faint, microscopic aura glyphs inside the pitch-black murals of the tomb. If you failed to focus Gyo into your eyes in time, you'd step on a hidden mechanism and trigger a swinging stone slab to the ribs. To teach you Shu, he gave you a dull, iron chisel and forced you to carve through solid granite by extending your nen into the metal tip. To teach you Ryu and KO. He fought you. Focus 80% of your aura to your left forearm. Right now. Jing shouted, swinging a heavy wooden surveying staff straight at your shoulder. You focused your aura rapidly, but your timing was slightly off. You only managed 50% distribution. The staff smashed into your arm, sending you flying 10 feet across the stone floor, skidding into the damp dirt. Too slow. Jing yelled, leaning on his staff and picking his nose. In a real fight against an enhancer or a chimera. Well, whatever, against a real monster, you just lost your arm. Shift the flow faster. You lay on the cold stone floor, bruised, gasping for breath, your entire left shoulder throbbing with intense pain. Your adult mind, pushed past the absolute limit of corporate stress, physical exhaustion, and sheer irritation at this 16-year-old menace, finally snapped. You pushed yourself up, wiped a streak of dirt and blood from your mouth, locked your eyes onto Jing, and spat on the flagstones. "Fuck you," you yelled, your voice echoing off the ancient tomb walls. The breakthrough. Jing froze. He pulled his finger away from his nose, blinked behind his messy dark bangs, and then a massive, arrogant grin split across his unwashed face. He threw his head back and laughed loudly, his laughter bouncing off the ancient stone arches. "Ha ha. There it is." Jing cheered, tossing his staff aside. "I was wondering when the polite, quiet little clerk act was gonna break. Good. Keep that fire, kid. Anger is fine, as long as it doesn't mess up your aura flow." Before you could even curse at him again, Jing lunged forward with blinding speed. Instinct took over. You didn't think, you reacted. Your mind called upon the concepts you knew from your past life's knowledge, but your body executed them in real time. You snapped into Ken to fortify your core, then instantly redistributed 70% of your aura to your right hand, forming a hardened KO fist as you threw a counter-punch directly at Jing's chest. Thwack. Your small, aura-wrapped fist struck Jing's open palm. The sheer impact created a sharp shockwave of compressed air that blew away the dust in a 5-meter radius around you both. Jing didn't move an inch, but his palm absorbed the strike cleanly. He looked down at your fist, then up at your glowing, intense eyes. Lesson progress, late February 1984. Ryu execution, successful 70/30ths dynamic shift under panic stress. Shu mastery, can fortify small hand tools for stone carving. An output, limited to a tiny 0.5 meter radius. Mentality, polite facade broken, true survival drive unlocked. Not bad, Jing grunted, letting go of your fist with a subtle nod of approval. Your N is practically non-existent because your aura pool is still tiny, but your Ryu and KO transitions are scary fast for an 11-year-old. He slapped you hard on your bruised shoulder, nearly knocking you over again. Month 2 is done, Ren. Stop crying, eat some stew, and get ready. Next month, we're doing water divination. Chapter 20, Water Divination and the Two Souls. March 2nd, 1984. The third month began in a subterranean shrine beneath the excavation site. The room was completely silent, carved out of deep sandstone, lit only by a single tallow candle resting on a square stone altar. Jing sat cross-legged across from you. Between you both rested a simple glass bowl, filled to the absolute brim with fresh, spring water. Floating delicately on top was a single green leaf. "There are 6 types of aura," Jing said, his voice unusually quiet and focused in the subterranean air. Enhancer, transmuter, emitter, conjurer, manipulator, and specialist. Everyone is born with an inherent affinity for one. Figure out your type, and you can build a hatsu that actually suits you. Jing leaned forward, resting his chin on his hands. The standard way to check is water divination. Place your hands around a glass, channel your ren, and watch what happens to the water and the leaf. The secret knowledge and the dilemma. Of course I know, you thought, keeping a calm, unreadable face. I've known for years. I read the manga, memorized Togashi's nen hexagram, and studied every water divination result on the fandom wiki back in my old world. You knew the exact triggers. Enhancement, the volume of water increases and overflows. Transmutation, the taste of the water changes. Emission, the color of the water changes. Conjuration, impurities or crystalline solids appear in the water. Manipulation, the leaf moves across the surface of the water. Specialization, a completely unique, completely unpredictable reaction occurs. Jing expected you to ask questions. Instead, you nodded once, placed your palms on opposite sides of the glass without touching the rim, and began to center your breathing. Jing raised an eyebrow behind his messy bangs. He was visibly caught off guard by how instantly and casually you grasped the underlying concept of aura resonance without a single word of explanation. He thinks I'm just a genius, you chuckled internally. If only you knew I read all about this on a glowing screen while eating leftover takeout. But as your aura began to stir at your core, a sudden, cold thought struck your mind, one that made your throat go dry. Wait. How does Nen actually evaluate a transmigrator? Nen is the manipulation of life energy, deeply intertwined with a person's spirit, memories, emotions, and consciousness. So what was the nature of your existence now? Was this body purely powered by your adult soul from Earth? Or was the quiet, dormant spirit of the original boy Ren, the fragile kid who died in the back of Korin's wagon, still woven into the nervous system of this body? Is your Nen type determined by your past life as a calculated, weary office worker? By Ren's tragic, pure nature? Or by the bizarre, fused entity of both? Nen is a mysterious, divine energy. Even figures like Netero or Jing didn't fully understand the absolute limits of the soul. The divination. Stop hesitating, kid, Jing grunted softly. Flow your Ren. You took a deep breath, pushing aside the spiraling existential thoughts, and flared your aura. A vibrant, translucent white shroud erupted from your hands, wrapping tightly around a glass bowl. The air in the quiet shrine grew heavy. Jing leaned in close, his dark eyes wide, watching the leaf and the surface of the water intently. For 3 long seconds, nothing happened. Then. Water divination result, March 2, 1984. One primary effect, the water did not overflow. 2 secondary effect, the green leaf drifted sharply to the left. 3 tertiary effect, the color of the water turned a pale, metallic silver gray. 4 anomaly, a thin layer of fine, sugar-like crystalline dust precipitated at the bottom of the glass. The leaf spun slowly in a tight circle before sliding smoothly across the surface. At the same time, the clear water dimmed into an iridescent, metallic silver, while microscopic crystalline specks settled at the bottom of the glass like fallen snow. A multifaceted, completely irregular reaction. Silence descended upon the underground shrine. Jing slowly reached out, dipped a finger into the silver water, and brought it to his tongue. He tasted it, squinted, and then stared at the glass in utter, complete disbelief. He didn't speak for nearly a full minute. The freak's reaction. Specialist, Jing muttered, his voice carrying a strange mix of awe and deep suspicion. Or a hybrid anomaly that shouldn't legally exist. He looked up from the glass and locked his eyes directly onto yours. The lazy, careless persona vanished completely, replaced by the terrifying, intense aura of a true high-tier hunter. Water divination doesn't give three distinct reactions at once, Ren, Jing said slowly, his voice dropping into a low, rumbling tone. That only happens when a person's aura is pulling in multiple, conflicting spiritual directions at the exact same time. He leaned across the altar, his face just inches from yours. Your aura. It feels like two distinct streams of water forced into a single narrow pipe. One part of it is rigid, calculated, and quiet. And the other part is raw, hungry, and persistent. Your heart hammered against your ribs, but your zetsu reflex held dead steady, keeping your face a completely blank, unreadable mask. He can feel it, you realized with a shiver. Nen doesn't lie. It exposed the duality of my existence. Jing stared at you for a long moment, then suddenly relaxed his posture, leaning back and rubbing his unwashed face with both hands, letting out a heavy, tired groan. Arg, fuck me, Jing groaned, tossing his head back. Kale handed me a monster. If Chairman Netero sees your divination results, he's gonna spend 3 months trying to dissect your oral logic. He kicked a pebble across the stone floor, looking at you with a wild, toothy grin. Specialization or multi-system hybrid. Whatever you are, kid, your Hatsu isn't going to be a normal one. You've got the soul of a puzzle. You looked down at your hands, then at the silver, crystal-dusted water in the bowl. The secret of your past life remained hidden in your mind, but your energy had spoken. You were no longer just a transmigrator surviving in a fiction, you were a unique anomaly woven directly into the living fabric of the Hunter x Hunter world.
Sleep was impossible. The lingering shock of yesterday's Chapter 21, The Geometry of a Divided Soul. March 3, 1984. The underground excavation camp was dead quiet. Outside the canvas tent, the cold desert wind howled against the sandstone cliffs, but inside, the light of a single kerosene lamp flickered quietly over your makeshift bed. You sat cross-legged, staring down at your open palms. Sleep was impossible. The lingering shock of yesterday's water divination echoed in your mind like a ringing bell. 3 distinct reactions in a single glass, the leaf moving, the water changing color to a pale metallic silver, and fine, sugar-like crystalline dust settling at the bottom. Jing had labeled you a specialist, or a hybrid anomaly. But as an Isekai transmigrator who understood the true physics of Nen, you needed to figure out what you actually were. The theoretical anatomy, his soul and mine. You closed your eyes and turned your focus inward, examining the architecture of your mind. The duality of the vessel. The original Ren. Born in Oakhaven, raised amidst the wilderness and hardship. Inherent nature, instinctive, survival-driven, grounded in physical matter. Resonant Nen types, conjuration and manipulation. The transmigrator. A former modern office worker who survived the corporate grind. Inherent nature, strategic, analytical, detached, projecting intent from afar. Resonant Nen types, omission and specialization. It makes total sense, you realized, a cold shiver running down your spine. Nen is not just bioenergy. It is the literal manifestation of mind, spirit, and emotion. When you transmigrated into this world, your adult consciousness didn't erase the original boy's biological footprint, it merged with it. Your physical body still carried Ren's innate neural pathways and physical instincts, while your mind carried your decades of memories, analytical habits, and modern knowledge. Because of this dual existence, your aura hexagram didn't have a single, clean anchor point. You were balanced on the razor-thin boundary between emission, conjuration, and manipulation, the exact tripoint that feeds directly into specialization. Deciphering your potential hatsu. If you were a specialist positioned at the crossroads of emission, conjuration, and manipulation, what did that mean for your future combat style? 1. You weren't an enhancer. You couldn't rely on raw, overwhelming physical force like Uvogan or Finks. Your physical aura output was efficient, but not inherently massive. 2. You were a strategic system builder. Your strength lay in structure, rules, distance control, and spatial manipulation. 3. The transmigrator's edge. Because your adult mind functioned like a highly organized ledger, you could construct complex NEN conditions, constraints, and operational loops without losing focus under intense combat stress. You leaned your head back against the canvas tent pole, watching the shadows dance across the roof. I have 16 years before Gon takes the hunter exam, you thought, letting out a long, quiet breath. I don't need a flashy, destructive hatsu. I need a ability that acts like a flawless, infallible blueprint, something that exploits my knowledge of the timeline and compensates for my body's physical limits. The freak's shadow. Suddenly, the tent flap rustled. You didn't flinch. Your zetsu didn't shatter. You simply turned your head as Jing leaned against the wooden support beam, a half-eaten green apple in his hand. He was wrapped in a thick, threadbare woolen blanket, his dark eyes observing you through the dim lamplight. Still awake, kid, Jing grunted, taking a loud, crunching bite of the apple. Just thinking, Mr. Jing, you replied neutrally. TCH, I told you to stop calling me Mr. Jing, he grumbled, chewing thoughtfully. Look, don't overthink your NEN category. The idiots in the association spend decades putting labels on their aura like it's a tax form. I'm an enhancer, so I only punch. I'm a conjurer, so I only make swords. Jing spat an apple seed onto the dirt floor. Aura is just aura. Your spirit is weird, so your aura is weird. Figure out what you want your power to do, build the rules to make it work, and don't give a damn about what category the books call it. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back over his shoulder with a sharp, toothy grin. Tomorrow morning, we start constructing your hatsu. Bring a notebook, you're gonna need it. Chapter 22, 2 Souls, 2 Hatsu. March 4, 1984. That night, the desert cold slipped past the canvas of your tent, but your mind was far away, submerged in a deep, vivid dream. For the first time since waking up in this world, you met Ren. It wasn't a haunting or a battle for control. He appeared as a frail, soft-spoken 9-year-old boy sitting on a mossy log beneath the giant pines of the Visca forest. His hands were calloused from gathering resin, and his eyes carried the quiet, heavy sadness of an orphan who had lost his mother too soon. You sat down beside him, like an older brother sitting with his younger sibling after a long, exhausting day. Are you angry at me? You asked gently, looking out at the foggy woods. For taking over your body? Ren shook his head slowly, a gentle, bittersweet smile touching his lips. No, I was so tired. When my mother passed, I didn't know how to survive the cold. You gave this body a second chance. You gave it strength, purpose, and a way to protect the people back in Oakhaven. You spent hours in that dream talking about everything, his life, his late mother, his love for the quiet woods, Mrs. Martha's warm rye bread, old man Corin's resin pot, and his simple wish to never be weak or helpless again. What do you want, Ren? You asked softly. I want to protect what's mine, Ren whispered, looking down at his hands. I want a power that shields the innocent, stands firm against monsters, and honors the life my mother gave me. You placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we'll build it together. When you woke up in the dark tent before dawn, tears had dried on your cheeks, but your heart felt completely weightless. The inner friction was gone. The two souls were no longer a collision, they were an alliance. The blueprint of two Hatsu. Sitting cross-legged as the horizon began to glow orange, you pulled out your leather notebook. Your transmigrator mind, sharp, analytical, and forward-thinking, began drafting the architecture for two distinct Nen abilities. The dual HATSU framework. HATSU-1, Ren's legacy, the public face. Origin, rooted in the original Ren's body, life, and desires. Primary types, conjuration and manipulation. Purpose, everyday combat, protecting allies, public hunter work. Concept, a grounded, highly practical defensive and supportive ability. Public profile, what Jing, Kale, and the Hunter Association will see. HATSU-2, THE anomaly, the ultimate secret. Origin, rooted in your transmigrator soul, memories, and future knowledge. Primary types, specialization and omission. Purpose, the absolute trump card, secret finishing move. Concept, an ability that exploits your knowledge of the original timeline. Manipulating information, intent, and critical moments. Secrecy level, absolute, known only to you, not Jing, not Netero, no one. The secret finishing move. You stared at the second entry in your journal, your heart beating with quiet intensity. Having a secret Hatsu was the ultimate safety net in the treacherous Hunter x Hunter universe. In a world where knowing an opponent's ability often means instant victory, carrying a hidden specialist trump card, one that no enemy, no troop member, and no chimera ant could ever predict or prepare for, was your greatest insurance policy. It would be built on strict vows and limitations. 1. Absolute concealment. The moment you reveal its existence to a single soul, the ability vanishes forever. 2. High-risk trigger. It can only be activated when your life, or the timeline itself, is on the absolute knife's edge. 3. The information advantage. A finishing move designed specifically to break the rules of conventional combat by leveraging your knowledge as an Isekai visitor. Morning light. You closed the notebook, sealed it in your inner tunic, and stepped out of the tent into the crisp desert morning. Jing was standing near the campfire, blowing into a tin cup of boiling water. He turned, squinting at you through his messy bangs, and paused. The subtle, erratic aura fluctuations that had confused him during the water divination were gone. Your aura was now perfectly smooth, harmonious, and impossibly quiet, a seamless fusion of two souls moving in absolute sync. Well, Jing grunted, a sharp smirk spreading across his face. You look like you finally figured out who you are, kid. I did, Mr. Jing, you said, stepping up to the fire with a calm, steady gaze. TCH, I told you to drop the, Mr. Jing, he grumbled, tossing a wooden spoon toward you. All right, let's hear it. What kind of Hatsu are we building? You smiled, a warm, polite smile for the world, hiding the lethal secret forged deep within your soul. Chapter 23, The Wren's Wishes, the Aegis of Oakhaven. Mid-March 1984. The spring thaws had begun, sending trickles of icy water through the ancient sandstone channels of the excavation site. Inside the quiet subterranean shrine, Jing sat back on a stone bench, tossing a small granite pebble up and down in his hand. A Hatsu isn't just a cool trick, Jing grunted, catching the stone. It's a contract between your aura, your mind, and your core desires. If you build something that doesn't align with who you are down to your bone marrow, it'll be weak, clumsy, and useless when real danger hits. You sat cross-legged on the cool floor, taking a deep breath. I know what I want to build first, you said calmly. Honoring the first soul, the public Hatsu. This first ability belonged to Ren, the boy who had lived and suffered in the wild woods of Oakhaven. The boy whose mother had died leaving him defenseless, and whose deepest wish was to protect his home, his loved ones, and himself from being crushed by a cruel world. It needed to be grounded, highly practical, and anchored in conjuration and manipulation, reinforced by solid defensive enhancement. HATSU Profile, Ren's Legacy. Name, Oakhaven Aegis, the Warden's Sanctuary. Nen Types, Conjuration Manipulation Enhancement. Description. Ren conjures a pair of heavy, antique iron and oak braces bound around his forearms. These braces act as directional anchors to deploy a movable, dense hexagonal barrier of aura. Operational mechanics. 1. Passive defense. The braces absorb physical shock, multiplying Ren's guarding efficiency against high-tier blunt attacks. 2. Active Aegis. Ren can project a localized aura shield up to 3 meters in front of himself or an ally to completely absorb or deflect incoming Hatsu projectiles. Vows and conditions. 1. Protection constraint. The shield's defensive output doubles if Ren is standing between an attacker and an unarmed civilian or ally. 2. Stationary anchor. To achieve maximum structural density, Ren's feet must remain planted in a firm root stance during deployment. Constructing the Aegis. For 2 straight weeks, Jing forced you through the grueling process of visualization and materialization. To conjure something real, you had to internalize every physical detail of iron and oak. You spent days touching the heavy iron braces on Ging's excavation tools, feeling the grain of Oakhaven pine, smelling rust, tasting iron dust, and closing your eyes until you could mentally trace every microscopic flaw in the metal. On March 18, 1984, you stood in the center of the subterranean shrine. You closed your eyes, invoking the memory of little Ren sitting on the mossy log in Visca Forest. I will never be helpless again, you promised in your heart. And no one under my watch will fall. You flared your aura. A bright, metallic gray mist gathered around your forearms, swirling with intense pressure. The air hissed with static electricity. Clang. With a sharp, metallic ring that echoed off the stone walls, a pair of rugged, antique dark oak braces, reinforced with dark iron bands and carved with subtle forest rune patterns, materialized tightly around your wrists. Ging's eyes widened slightly. He didn't say a word as he picked up a 10-pound granite block, wound up his arm, and hurled it at your chest at lethal speed. Instinct took over. You snapped into a rooted stance, crossed your forearms, and deployed the projected aura barrier. Thwack! A shimmering, hexagonal shield of golden-gray energy burst forth from the braces. The granite block slammed into the barrier, shattering instantly into fine white powder without forcing your stance back even half an inch. The freak's approval. The dust settled slowly in the cavern. Jing walked over, inspecting the conjured braces on your arms. He ran a dirty thumb over the detailed ironwork, feeling the solid, physical reality of the materialized object, then pressed his hand against the lingering hum of your defensive aura. Conjuration reinforced by a protective manipulation loop, Jing murmured, a broad, genuine grin spreading across his face. Clean structure, clear conditions, and it built off your natural desire to guard and survive. He slapped you hard on the back, sending a cloud of dust flying from your shirt. It's a damn fine shield, Ren. Publicly, anyone looking at you will think you're a classic conjurer, manipulator tank. It's solid, practical, and gets the job done. You unsummoned the braces, letting them dissolve back into faint aura mist, and offered Jing a polite, humble bow. Thank you, Mr. Jing. TCH. Still with the Mr. Jing, he grumbled, turning toward the tent exit. Now that Ren's wish is built, what about that weird, secret flicker in your aura? You gonna work on your second one? Your heart skipped a beat, but your expression stayed entirely serene. The shield is enough for now, you lied smoothly with a gentle smile. One step at a time. Deep inside the vault of your soul, your transmigrator mind smiled back. The public face was complete, a rock-solid, defensive Hatsu that honored the boy who gave you this life. And hidden behind it, completely untouched and unsuspected, the true, lethal specialist trump card lay waiting in the shadows of your memory. Chapter 24, The Secret Ledger, The Transmigrator's Gambit. Late March 1984. By the end of March, the excavation near the Karkan border was drawing to a close. The heavy machinery was being packed into transport crates, and Ging's team of diggers was preparing to break camp. While Jing spent his afternoon arguing with the logistics crew about shipping fees, you sat alone atop a sandstone ridge overlooking the endless desert valley. The public shield, Oakhaven Aegis, was fully forged and registered in your body's muscle memory. To Kale, Jing, and the rest of the world, you were a prodigy child who had developed a robust, defensive conjuration-type Hatsu. Now, in total isolation, it was time to construct your secret. The anomaly, a transmigrator's weapon. You opened your mind to the cold, analytical mindset of your past life. You weren't just a martial artist in this world, you were an observer who carried the blueprint of the entire Hunter x Hunter timeline in your head. You knew about the Phantom Troops massacre in York New, Greed Island's hidden rules, the Chimera ant infestation in NGL, and the deadly politics of the succession contest. A normal Nen ability operates on physical force or direct manipulation. But your secret ability, your true specialist Hatsu, needed to operate on information, causality, and absolute surprise. Forging the secret vow. Sitting on that sandstone cliff as the cold desert wind whipped around you, you closed your eyes and turned your aura inward. Instead of conjuring physical braces, you focused your specialist aura into a tiny, dense needle point near your core. You laid down the vows and limitations with total, unyielding mental conviction. If I ever speak of this power, if I ever reveal that I know the future of this world, strip away my Nen and consume my life force. The universe responded instantly. A cold, razor-thin shockwave of dark silver aura pulsed internally through your heart and brain, locking the secret contract into the very fabric of your soul. The condition was bound, the ledger was written in secret blood. You felt a subtle shift in your perception. The world around you seemed clearer, slower, as if reality itself was yielding a tiny fraction of its momentum to your transmigrator mind. Farewell to the freak. Hey, kid, stop staring at the dirt and grab your pack. Ging's voice roared from the base of the ridge, shattering the silence. You opened your eyes, instantly suppressing your specialist aura with a flawless, ghost-like Zetsu. The cold silver glow vanished into nothingness. You slid down the rocky slope, slinging your heavy canvas backpack over your shoulders. Jing was standing near a dusty jeep, his hands in his pockets, looking down at you with a wry, toothy grin. Kale's train gets into Dentora tomorrow morning, Jing said, tossing a rusted tin of dried peaches to you. He's picking you up and taking you back to Yorbian. You survived 4 months with me without dying or crying too much. Not bad. Thank you for everything, Mr. Jing, you said with a respectful bow. TCH. I told you 100 times, drop the, Mr. Jing, he grumbled, hopping into the driver's seat of the Jeep and revving the engine. Go back to your fundamentals. Build your muscle, grow a few inches, and don't go getting killed before you take the hunter exam. I won't, you replied softly. As the Jeep kicked up a massive cloud of yellow desert dust, you stood by the roadside, watching Jing Free-CSS drive away toward his next crazy adventure. Returning to Dentora, EARLY 1984. You turned toward the train station, your small boots crunching quietly on the gravel. The initial training phase was complete. You had survived the Visca wilderness, mastered human street combat, awakened Nen under Kale, and forged your dual Hatsu under Jing. Now, it was time to step out into the wider world. Chapter 25, The Ghost in the Engine. April 1984. The rhythmic clack-clack of the train tracks echoed through the wooden passenger car as the train rolled south toward Dentora. Sitting by the window with your head rested against the cold glass, you stared out at the passing green plains of the Yorbian countryside. Kale was sitting across from you, fast asleep with his hat pulled down over his eyes. In the quiet solitude of the rattling train, your mind turned inward, peeling back the final, deepest layer of your existence. The reality of death, post-mortem Nen. In the universe of Hunter x Hunter, there exists a terrifying, absolute phenomenon known as Nen after death. When a Nen user dies carrying intense emotions, an unyielding grudge, an overwhelming desire to protect, or a desperate dying wish, their life energy doesn't dissipate. Unshackled by the physical limitations, fatigue, and pain of a living vessel, the aura lingers, becoming drastically, exponentially more powerful. And that was the fundamental truth of your body. When T-original Ren nearly die, he was awaken his Nen pure of the sheer will. Right before he die, the death does not necessarily result in the cessation of their abilities. On the contrary, it may cause pre-existing abilities to become even more powerful. The most common reason for this phenomenon to occur is a dying user harboring a strong grudge, which will cause their Nen to seek out the object of their hatred and cling to it. But in Ren case, it's special. It's mysterious. You had died in your past life, an exhausted corporate worker whose spirit collapsed under the weight of an unfulfilling existence. Ren had died in this world, a frail, terrified child whose life was cut short on a cold, muddy road in Visca. You weren't just a transmigrator walking around in a child's body. You were a living manifestation of post-mortem Nen. Because your existence was forged from the literal ashes of 2 deaths, your latent specialist energy operated under entirely different laws. Normal hunters had to shackle themselves with severe vows and limitations to force their aura into high output, sacrificing their health, lifespan, or conditions to gain terrifying power. You didn't need extreme self-destructive vows. The raw, lingering weight of 2 dead souls was already providing the ultimate energetic fuel. The secret specialist Hatsu, re-engineered. With this realization, the architecture of your secret specialist Hatsu shifted, crystallizing into its true, ultimate form. It wasn't a rigid, dangerous contract, it was an ability rooted in empathy, deep observation, and absolute narrative comprehension. Secret Hatsu, THE Transmigrator, S Trump Card. Name, Chronicle of the Departed, Empathic Resonance. Nen Type, Specialization. Core Mechanic, Skill reso copying. Ren can perfectly replicate, adapt, and deploy the Hatsu abilities of other Nen users, living or dead. The understanding factor. Unlike Crollo Lusilfa's skill hunter, which requires strict physical conditions. A physical book, and keeping the target alive, Ren's copying power relies entirely on empathic and narrative understanding. Level 1. Ren knows their name and basic ability right pointing arrow 30% efficiency. Level 2. Ren understands their combat style and strategy right pointing arrow 60% efficiency. Level 3. Ren deeply comprehends their background, trauma, deepest emotions, drive, and ultimate fate right pointing arrow 100% plus peak efficiency. Engine power, post-mortem fuel. Because the ability is powered by the dual post-mortem aura of Ren's and the transmigrators. Deaths, it requires no crippling personal vows or physical books to maintain the absolute edge. A cold, quiet realization washed over you as you looked down at your small, calloused hands. Crollo Lusilfa had to steal abilities through a complex, high-stress ritual of 4 strict conditions. You didn't need to steal anything. Your mind was already a library containing the entire story of this world. You understood Kurapika's suffocating grief for the Kurta clan. You understood Meruem's tragic awakening to humanity. You understood Hisoka's obsessive desire for dangerous targets. You understood Ging's endless hunger for the unknown. The deeper you understood a character's core spirit and trauma, the more flawlessly their Nen abilities flowed into your hands. And because your aura was backed by the quiet, inexhaustible engine of post-mortem Nen, you could wield those replicated powers without the crushing physical backlash that would kill a normal 11-year-old child. The unshakable foundation. Clack, 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 clack. The train gave a sudden lurch as it began to slow down, entering the misty outskirts of Dentora Station. Kale stirred in his seat, rubbing his eyes and adjusting his dark glasses. "We're almost there, Ren," Kale muttered, his voice gravelly from sleep. He looked across at you, squinting slightly. "You seem different, quiet." "Just resting, Instructor Kale," you replied with a small, polite smile. You reached down, adjusting the heavy, iron and oak braces of your public Hatsu, Oakhaven Aegis, strapped securely to your forearms. To Kale, to the Hunter Association, and to every enemy you would ever face, you were just a talented, polite kid with a rock-solid defensive shield. They would never suspect that behind your calm eyes sat 2 dead souls, a complete map of their world's destiny, and an infinite, echoing vault of every power this universe had ever created. Chapter 26, The Dossier of the Freak. Late April 1984. Back in the familiar, quiet apartment in Dentora, Kale sat at the small kitchen table. The afternoon sun filtered through dirty glass, illuminating 2 thick manila envelopes that had arrived via specialized association carrier Hawk. Both envelopes bore the muddy thumbprint seal of Jing Free CSS. Jing was infamous within the association for refusing to write paperwork. He dodged administrative forms, ignored committee requests, and threw official notices into campfires. The fact that he had actually penned 2 separate reports regarding your 4-month apprenticeship was unprecedented. Kale broke the wax seal of the first envelope, addressed directly to him. Envelope 1, the simple report. Informal field report, private. From Jing Free CSS. 2. Kale. Kale. The kid didn't die, he didn't cry either, though he did tell me to fuck off. around month 2 when I hit him with a wooden staff. That was the best part. His basics are terrifyingly clean. He learned shu, ko, and ru faster than any kid his age has a right to. His zetsu isn't normal, it's like he completely erases his existence. He built a solid public defensive hatsu, some kunjid braces that throw up an aura shield. It's practical, sturdy, and suits his stubborn streak. Take him back to your basic physical conditioning. He's got the fundamentals locked down, but his body is still 11 years old. Don't let him overtrain his aura output until his lungs and bones catch up. He's a good kid, Kale, but keep an eye on his eyes. Sometimes he looks at you like he already knows how you're gonna die. Geeing. Kale let out a soft, rare chuckle, folding the letter and slipping it into his coat pocket. He looked across the hallway toward your room, where you were calmly sitting cross-legged, practicing light 10 control while reading a medical textbook. He told Geeing to fuck off, Kale muttered to himself, shaking his head with a faint grin. Good. Then, Kale turned his attention to the second envelope. It was heavily stamped with red security wax, addressed directly to the Hunter Association Executive Committee, Special Observation Division. This was the official, classified evaluation requested by the higher-ups, part of an ongoing, multi-year mandate directly connected to Chairman Netero's directive to monitor promising anomalies across the continents. Kale didn't open it. As an association agent, his job was simply to inspect the seal and forward it to HQ via secure courier. But inside that sealed envelope sat Ging's unfiltered, highly detailed observation log. Envelope 2, the Association Dossier. Hunter Association Candidate Assessment Dossier. Subject, Candidate, Ren. Supervising Hunter, Geeing Free CSS. Evaluation period, December 1983 to April 1984. Location, Karkan Royal Burial Ground Excavation Site. 1. Observational Summary and Behavioral Analysis. Subject demonstrates an unnatural level of psychological stability and strategic detachment. Despite his young age, he exhibits the decision-making speed and emotional composure of a hardened veteran combatant. He adapts to high stress, lethal environments without showing panic, disorientation, or childhood fear. 2. Advanced Nen Mastery and Water Divination Anomaly. Subject mastered Gyo, Shu, Ko, Ken, and Ru within 30 days of introduction. His aura distribution speed achieved a 70/30ths dynamic shift under live combat stress. Critical anomaly, water divination result. During testing, subject produced 3 simultaneous, distinct reactions. Displacement, movement if medium. Color alteration to iridescent silver. Crystal line precipitation at container base. Diagnosis. Subject is officially classified as a specialist anomaly. His aura structure does not possess a single anchor point. It functions as a dual stream or multifaceted system. It is my belief that his spirit carries 2 distinct internal motivations, working in total synchronization. 3. Public HATSU profile. Name, Oakhaven Aegis. Classification, conjuration, manipulation, enhancement. Function, conjures structural forearm braces to project dense hexagonal directional energy barriers, high defensive density, strict positional vows. 4. Supervising Hunter's final verdict and warning. Candidate, Ren, is completely safe from a public threat perspective. He possesses no malice, sadism, or chaotic desire for destruction. However, he is a complete enigma. His learning curve is not talent, it is recognition. It feels less like he is learning Nen for the first time, and more like he is remembering something he already knew. Recommendation. Approve for continued private clearance under Hunter Kale. Do not interfere with his development. Allow him to take the Hunter exam when he deems himself ready. If Chairman Netero wishes to inspect him personally, do so discreetly. Evaluator signature. Jing Free CSS. The Eye in the Sky. 3 days later, deep within the ivory towers of the Hunter Association headquarters in Metropolitan City, the report landed on a polished mahogany desk. A pair of weathered, ancient hands picked up the document. Chairman Isaac Netero adjusted his traditional wooden clogs, leaning back in his chair as his sharp, wooden-soled feet rested on the desk. He read through Ging's detailed notes, his quiet, energetic eyes twinkling behind his long brows. Ho ho, Netero chuckled softly, his voice echoing in the empty, quiet office. A kid who made Jing write 4 pages of detailed analysis, and a triple reaction water divination. Netero set the paper down, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window toward the distant horizon. 2 streams in 1 vessel. How very interesting. Let the boy grow. The world is going to get quite noisy in a few years. Back in Dentora, unaware that your file was sitting on the chairman's desk, you closed your book, stood up, and looked out the window. Your public cover was solid, your secret Hatsu was locked safely away in the vault of your post-mortem soul, and the highest authorities in the world were content to watch you grow from a distance. The year was 1984. You were 11 years old, and the long, quiet grind toward the future had officially begun. Chapter 27, The Silent Year and the Growing Shadow. The remainder of 1984 passed in a blur of focused routine. After the chaotic, high-pressure environment of Ging's excavation site, the return to Dentora felt almost unnervingly quiet. But the quiet was necessary. Kale, adhering strictly to Ging's advice, scaled back your intensive Nen training for the first few months. The focus shifted back to raw physical conditioning, running, climbing, swimming, and mastering complex martial forms without activating your aura. Your mind is already sharpened, Kale stated during an early morning training session, watching you hold a perfect, rock-steady handstand. But your Nen pool is bounded by your stamina. If we overstrain your Nen before your muscles and organs catch up, we risk stunt your growth or worse. Be patient, Ren. Patience was easy for you. You were building a foundation that would last a lifetime. When you did train in Nen, it was subtle. You practiced 10-24/7, even while sleeping, until it became as instinctive as breathing. You practiced Zetsu in crowded markets, weaving through pedestrians so efficiently you became invisible in plain sight, ensuring you could vanish instantly at any moment. But most importantly, during your solitary meditations, you worked on your secret Hatsu, the chronicle of the departed, empathic resonance. This didn't require raw power. It required analytical refinement. You spent hours organizing your transmigrator knowledge. You mapped out the intricate backstories, emotional triggers, and Hatsu mechanics of dozens of canon characters. You cross-referenced Ging's descriptions of other famous hunters with your future knowledge, filling in the gaps of their abilities and psychological frameworks. You were preloading your mental database, ensuring that when the time came, you could replicate critical abilities, like Pakunoda's memory manipulation, Hisoka's bungee gum, or even the Zoldyck assassination techniques, with devastating efficiency, powered by your dual post-mortem Nen. Ging's warning to the association, that your learning felt more like recognition than acquisition, was becoming your greatest strategic asset. MID 1985, The Unseen Watchers. While you focused on internal growth, the Hunter Association remained a shadow. You knew, through your understanding of Netero's personality, that they weren't going to interfere actively. But you were always aware that you were being observed. Every few weeks, the local courier service would deliver sealed envelopes to your apartment. These letters were often cryptic, containing mission briefs for Kale or generalized bulletins. But sometimes, they contained strange, highly stylized illustrations or philosophical questions that had nothing to do with Kale's work. You suspect these were subtle tests from Chairman Netero or his inner circle, gauging your personality, your reactions, and your perception of the world from afar. You responded to these with respectful, unassuming intelligence, playing the role of a precocious but polite child, keeping your specialist nature locked deep in the vault. Kale rarely spoke about the association's interest in you. But his protectiveness was absolute. He vetted every courier, scanned every letter, and maintained a constant, subtle sphere around the apartment at night. He had been given a mandate to watch you, but he was also your instructor, and that bond ran deeper than association protocols. Status assessment, late 1985. Age, 12 years old. Physical build, significantly increased stature, dense musculature. High efficiency anaerobic conditioning. Nen type profile, refined specialist. Mastery. Basic techniques, natural proficiency. Advanced concepts, skills established. Public Hatsu, Oakhaven Aegis, structural density maximized. Conditioning for the 200th floor defense is underway. Secret Hatsu, Chronicle of the Departed, database organization at Level 3 for 15+ high-tier targets. A shift in the wind. In late 1985, as autumn leaves painted the city of Dentora gold, Kale returned from a meeting with a high-level association handler. He looked unusually pensive as he closed the apartment door. "Ren," he said, taking off his dark glasses and looking at you directly. "You've made remarkable progress. Your public shield is flawless for your age, and your discipline is unmatched." Kale walked to the window, looking down at the street below. "Your foundation is set. Now it's time to move beyond training drills." He turned back to you, his expression firm. "We have been operating in isolation. But a hunter must move with the world. I've accepted a commission from the association, a series of localized blacklist missions. They are designed to test real-world strategic application and adaptability in unpredictable environments. This won't be like training in the Visca forest or Ging's excavation site. This is tracking targets through functional cities, navigating complex social networks, and executing operations without attracting attention. You will be accompanying me. This is your next phase, Ren. You are no longer just a talented student in training. You are an apprentice hunter on active assignment. We leave in 3 days. The target is a mercenary cell hiding in the trading hubs of the Yorknew region." Yorknew. The name sent a jolt of recognition through your post-mortem mind. You had 16 years until the Phantom Troops massacre would turn that city into a war zone. You looked at Kale and offered a calm, steady bow. "I'm ready, Instructor Kale." You walked to your room and picked up your training notebook, closing the final page. The quiet, silent year in Dentora was over. The blueprint was drawn, the foundation was set, and the two souls were ready for their first true field operation. It was time to put your Aegis and your secret library to the test in the wider world. Chapter 28, The Road to Yorknew. November 1985. The autumn air grew biting cold as the long-distance train clattered along the rail lines heading toward the southwestern territory of the Yorbian continent. You sat in a quiet, second-class compartment, your canvas duffel bag stowed neatly in the overhead rack. Across from you, Cale was quietly reading a local newspaper, his dark trench coat folded beside him. At 12 years old, your physical growth was making noticeable progress. You were no longer the frail, undernourished child who had collapsed in the Visca forest. Your stature had filled out with lean, dense muscle, your posture was effortlessly straight, and your breathing was so measured that a normal passenger sitting next to you wouldn't even hear your inhalations. To any passerby, you looked like a quiet, well-behaved apprentice traveling with his uncle. To the underground world, you were a silent apprentice entering active field operations. The mission, Operative Cell, Viper. Cale folded the newspaper in half and laid a small, red manila folder onto the small wooden table between you. Here is the breakdown, Cale said softly, his voice barely carrying above the rhythmic hum of the train tracks. We aren't here for a simple hunt. We are hunting a specialized mercenary cell operating under the moniker Viper. Blacklist target profile, Cell, Viper. Lead target, Marcus, the Weaver. Known Nen type, Manipulator. Cell size, 4 combatants plus 1 enforcer. Current location, outskirts of southern Yorknew. Mission objective, neutralize Marcus, recover stolen association artifact ledgers. Marcus isn't a high-tier monster like the ones you'll meet in the upper floors of Heaven's Arena, Cale explained, his dark glasses reflecting the faint overhead lamplight. He is an opportunistic snake. He operates in the gray zone, trading stolen military arms, extortion, and silent assassinations. He leaned forward, looking directly at you. Your role in this operation is active defense and support. You will secure the exit routes using Zetsu, set up a defensive perimeter with your Oakhaven Aegis if things turn ugly, and handle any non-Nen combatants who try to flank us. Understood, Instructor Cale, you replied calmly. No heroics, Ren, Cale added, his tone sharpening slightly. Jing taught you how to survive chaos, but street combat with real mercenaries means cheap shots, hidden explosives, and poison. Keep your Gyo active on your eyes at all times. Yorknew's shadow. Looking out the rain-streaked window, you watched the distant, glowing silhouette of Yorknew City break through the fog. In 1985, 16 years before Gon, Killua, and Kurapika would converge here during the fateful Southern Peace auction, Yorknew was already a bustling, sprawling metropolis. It was a city powered by massive trade, corrupt financial syndicates, and the quiet, heavy hand of the 10 Don Mafia families ruling from the dark. Your transmigrator mind felt a quiet spark of nostalgia. 16 years, you thought, resting your chin on your hand. By the time the canon timeline kicked off in 1999-2000, Kurapika would be driven by absolute vengeance against the Phantom Troop. Crollo Lucifer and the troop would be planning their ultimate heist. Hisoka would be hunting strong targets for his sick amusement. Right now, in late 1985, the Phantom Troop was already formed in Meteor City, but they were still a young, ghost-like rumor in the underworld. Kurapika was just a young boy playing in the isolated village of the Kurta clan, completely unaware of the tragic fate awaiting his people in just a few years. I have time, you reminded yourself. Plenty of time to grow, collect information, and build an unshakable foundation. The first contact. At midnight, the train pulled into a foggy suburban depot 10 miles south of Yorknew's main commercial district. The air smelled of wet asphalt, salt water, and rust. You and Cale stepped off the platform, vanishing into the shadowed alleys of an industrial dockyards district filled with abandoned grain silos and rotting wooden piers. You closed your eyes, taking a deep, rhythmic breath. Without producing a single sound, your nodes snapped into a flawless, ghost-like zetsu. Your life energy shrank into absolute zero. To the surrounding world, you ceased to exist as a living being, you were just another shadow cast by the rusting iron beams. Kale gave a subtle, approving nod, pulling a pair of silenced combat knives from his coat. Target warehouse is 200 meters ahead, Kale whispered, his own aura pulling tight into a subtle in-shroud. 4 guards on the perimeter. Marcus is inside. You reach to your wrists, feeling the cool, solid iron of the conjured braces under your dark tunic. Oakhaven Aegis was ready. Your secret specialist library sat quiet and vigilant in the vault of your post-mortem soul. Your first real field operation in the Hunter x Hunter world had officially begun. The pre-mission audit. Before stepping beyond the rusted iron perimeter gate of the warehouse district, you pulled back into the deepest shadow of an abandoned grain silo. Kale crouched 10 feet ahead, his ears tuned to the quiet crunch of gravel in the distance. He gave you a silent 2-finger hand signal, 30 seconds to recheck gear. You closed your eyes, dropped your heart rate to 40 beats per minute, and turned your transmigrator mind inward. In the cold, quiet void of your consciousness, you performed a complete, methodical status audit of your 12-year-old body, your dual soul, and your dual nen systems. Individual status sheet, November 1985. Subject profile and progress. Name, Ren. Age, 12 years old. Height, weight, 152 centimeters, 44 kilograms. Physical status, high efficiency anaerobic build, core muscle density plus 40%. Nen classification, specialist anomaly. Current Nen capacity, intermediate. Core engine, dual post-mortem aura. Advanced Nen mastery and stat breakdown. Technique mastery level strategic application, current limit. 10-100% active 24/7, even during deep sleep. 0 aura leakage. Zetsu 100% ghost level suppression. Undetectable by standard N under 5 meters. Ren 65% sustainable high output for 45 consecutive minutes. Gyo 85% instantaneous shift to eyes, limbs, immune to basic illusions. Shu 80% extends aura smoothly into iron braces, blades, or throwing tools. Ko, Ken, Ru 75% dynamic aura redistribution operates at 70/30ths in 0.15 s. And 20% maximum radius, 1.5 meters. Kept small to conserve aura pool. Dual HATSU blueprint. Public Hatsu, Oakhaven Aegis. Primary types, conjuration manipulation enhancement. Materialization, paired antique iron and oak forearm braces. Active function, projects a dense, hexagonal directional aura barrier up to 3 meters. Current stance, rooted stance yields maximum defensive density. Absorbs 100% of non-Nen heavy ballistics and B-tier Nen projectiles. Public perception, solid, practical, tank, build. What Kale and the Association see. Secret Hatsu, Chronicle of the Departed. Primary type, specialization. Fuel source, unshackled post-mortem aura. Core function, empathic skill reso copying. Power modifier, directly scales with empathic and narrative understanding. Current database index and reso levels. Kale level 2. Ready for the breach. You opened your eyes. The glowing status ledger faded back into the dark vault of your soul. Your physical body was still 12, meaning you couldn't trade endless, heavy physical blows with a full-grown enhancer like Uvogan. But your fundamentals were razor sharp, your public defensive shield was rock solid, and your secret specialist library gave you an unshakable, unfair tactical advantage against anyone whose psychological profile you understood. Marcus uses aura-infused wire loops, you thought, stepping up behind Kale as he cut through the chain-link fence with an aura-coated wire cutter. Manipulator type, relies on tension, stealth, and choking hazard. I already know how he moves. You adjusted the iron braces hidden under your long black sleeves, tapped your nodes into a silent, absolute zetsu, and slipped through the cut fence behind your instructor. It was time to take down Cell, Viper. The breach was silent. The moment you slipped through the severed fence behind Kale, you were no longer Ren, the polite 12-year-old student. You were a void in reality. Your zetsu was flawless. Even the ambient sound of your footsteps on the rain-slicked gravel was absorbed by your absolute aura suppression. The warehouse yard was a maze of rusted shipping containers and pools of oil reflecting the distant, watery streetlights of York New's outer rim. The air was thick with the scent of salty rot from the nearby docks. Kale moved with practiced, serpentine efficiency, drifting from shadow to shadow. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. He trusted your competence implicitly. 30 seconds, Kale's whisper barely registered above the buzz of static. You activated Gyo in your eyes. Instantly, the pitch-black warehouse yard shifted. The oppressive darkness vanished, replaced by a complex network of subtle, translucent thermal patterns and faint, lingering traces of life energy. Gyo active, tactical HUD. Visual profile, enhanced thermal, aura contrast. Ambient read, low-level life traces. Anomaly, a faint, high-tension wire signature detected 15 meters ahead. There, your transmigrator mind noted calmly. You detected the first trap. Marcus, the Weaver, had done his homework. Stretched tight across the narrow gap between two shipping containers, just at throat height for a running adult, was a single, molecule-thin wire loop. It was nearly invisible to the naked eye. More importantly, it carried a subtle shroud of making it undetectable even to basic Gyo unless the user was specifically looking for manipulation traps. You tapped Kale once on the shoulder, pointing low, then high. Kale paused, adjusted his stride, and stepped over the ground tripwire, then ducked smoothly under the throat wire loop. He offered a quick, silent thumbs up. Your knowledge of the target's profile, gained from both mission briefings and your future site library, was already paying tactical dividends. The interior, entry point Alpha. Kale bypassed the heavily guarded front entrance, scaling a corroded ventilation stack to access the upper maintenance catwalk. You followed, your light, agile 12-year-old frame scaling the iron struts with an eerie, spider-like quietness. Inside, the warehouse smelled of diesel, ozone, and unwashed bodies. Below on the main floor, the mercury vapor lamps cast erratic cones of yellow light on stacks of wooden crates. 5 mercenaries were visible. 4 were standard non-nen contract killers, checking magazines on automatic weapons. The 5th, sitting on a stack of crates in the center, was Marcus. Target confirmation, Marcus, the Weaver. Appearance, mid-30s, lean build, slicked back greasy hair. Aura read, unsteady Ren, indicates paranoia rather than control. Gear, standard tactical vest, but with spooled hooks on his wrists. Narrative understanding, level 2. Marcus was a typical gray zone opportunistic nen user. He had raw talent but lacked true discipline. However, because his life had been spent on the street, his application of manipulation was efficient and cruel. He was currently absent-mindedly weaving a complex cat's cradle pattern between his fingers using a spool of aura-infused piano wire. Kale slid into position above them, balancing perfectly on a single iron strut. He looked down at you, his dark glasses obscuring his eyes, and gave a silent 3-finger countdown. The plan was simple. Kale would trigger the engagement by taking Marcus down instantly. You were responsible for the containment of the non-nen combatants and immediate retreat defense. 3, 2, 1. Kale flared his aura into a violent, localized pulse of concealed Ren, vanishing from the catwalk in an instantaneous sprint. Thwack. Kale didn't land on the ground. He slammed into the main warehouse stack of crates. He threw 2 silenced combat knives with blinding speed. One slashed Marcus's left cheek, the second severed the main wire spool hook on his left wrist before Marcus even registered the attack. Nen user, Marcus shrieked, scrambling backward, his greasy hair flying as his controlled wire network instantly collapsed into tangled chaos. Contact, left flank, a non-nen mercenary bellowed, raising an assault rifle. Your turn. You dropped silently from the catwalk, landing 10 feet behind the mercenary firing line. You didn't use lethal force. That was Kale's department. Your job was containment. You flared your nodes into a focused burst of Ren, feeding that energy into your forearm braces with rapid shoe extension. Oakhaven Aegis. Deployment. You crossed your forearms, snapping your body into the perfect rooted defensive stance. Don't worry about me, you muttered, your voice flat and cold. Worry about the shield. A shimmering, silver-gray hexagonal wall of pure, solidified aura erupted from your braces, snapping into a 5-meter-wide barrier that sealed off the main exit behind the mercenaries. The sound of rifle fire hitting your shield wasn't a lethal crack. It was a rhythmic, muffled thump thump thump, like raindrops hitting a dense, metal drum. You held the stance, absorbing the kinetic energy without moving an inch. Public Hatsu. Working as intended, you thought, watching the panicked mercenaries turn their fire away from Kale and toward your unbreakable shield. This first field operation was running smooth as clockwork. Chapter 29, The Crossroads at York News Edge. Late November 1985. The smoke inside the warehouse settled quickly. Within 90 seconds, the operation was completely over. Marcus lay unconscious on the oil-stained floor, his wrist spools severed and his aura suppressed by Kale's heavy nen cuffs. The 4 non-nen mercenaries were disarmed and bound, staring in utter disbelief at the 12-year-old kid whose silver-gray aura shield hadn't flickered once under a full assault of automatic fire. You unsummoned Oakhaven Aegis. The heavy iron and oak braces dissolved into faint silver mist, leaving your forearms completely unblemished. Clean execution, Ren, Kale said calmly, wiping his combat knife with a cloth before sheathing it beneath his trench coat. He didn't look exhausted. He looked like a professional who had just completed a routine administrative errand. 0 collateral, 0 casualties on our side, and the association ledgers are intact. Thank you, Instructor Kale, you replied, giving a brief, polite bow as you adjusted your sleeves over your wrists. After securing the targets for the local Hunter Association retrieval squad, the 2 of you walked out into the crisp, rainy midnight air of York News Outer Docks. The city lights sparkled across the bay, reflecting off the dark, churning Atlantic water. Kale stopped near a rusted iron guardrail overlooking the harbor, pulling out a cigarette and lighting it with a small match. He took a slow drag, letting the gray smoke drift into the night fog. "You're 12 now, Ren," Kale said softly, his dark glasses obscuring his eyes in the dim streetlight. "Your fundamentals are rock solid, your public hatsu is fully realized, and you handle live combat without a single drop of panic. You don't need a babysitter anymore." He turned to face you, leaning his back against the rail. "Which brings us to your future. I'm giving you 2 choices for where we go next. The 2 paths." Kale held up his index finger. "Choice 1. You apply for the 1986 xhunter exam this coming January." He flicked a speck of ash from his cigarette. "With your mastery of Nen, your physical conditioning, and your strategic mind, passing the exam will be a total walk in the park. You would become one of the youngest licensed hunters in the history of the association, a genuine prodigy. It opens up immediate access to the association's classified databases, funding, and global transit privileges." Then, Kale held up his middle finger. "Choice 2. You skip the exam for now and accompany me on a long-term undercover assignment to Meteor City." Your transmigrator heart skipped a single, quiet beat at the mention of that name, but your face remained an absolute, unreadable mask. "The association has detected an unregistered mafia syndicate using the junk heaps of Meteor City as a major human trafficking and illegal weapons hub," Kale explained, his tone dropping an octave. "I need an operative who can slip under the radar. Since licensed hunters carry heavy digital footprints and attract immediate suspicion from the local elders, I need a non-hunter, spy, someone young, silent, and invisible, to accompany me." The Transmigrator's calculation. Meteor City, 1985-1986. In the vault of your post-mortem soul, your Transmigrator database instantly lit up with canonical knowledge. You knew the history of that desolate wasteland like the back of your hand. In 1986-1987, a young Krolo Lusilfa would gather his closest childhood friends, Pakunoda, Machi, Phaeton, Finks, Nobunaga, Franklin, and Uvogan, to officially form the Phantom Troop. Their birth was forged in blood, tragedy, and an unyielding, bitter vow to protect Meteor City from outside exploitation at any cost. "If I go to Meteor City now," you realized, "I'll be standing on the very ground where the spider is born." However, that was a story for another time. Right now, you had to answer Kale's question. The choice: staying in the shadows. "Well," Kale asked, watching you closely through the cold fog. "Becoming one of the youngest hunters in history sounds tempting for a kid your age. Why wouldn't you take the exam?" You looked out over the dark water of York New Harbor, offering a quiet, humble smile. "Being one of the youngest hunters ever puts a massive spotlight on my back, Instructor Kale," you answered calmly, your voice steady and grounded. "It brings public attention, association politics, and eyes from people I'd rather not deal with yet. Spotlight brings trouble. I prefer to stay low." Kale stared at you for 3 long seconds. Then, a slow, genuine smirk spread across his face, and he let out a dry, quiet chuckle. "You really don't think like a 12-year-old, Kale muttered, shaking his head as he tossed his finished cigarette into the harbor. "Most kids your age would leap at the chance to show off a hunter license to the world." "I don't need a piece of plastic to prove I can survive," you replied softly. "Good answer," Kale said, turning to walk toward the railway depot. "Pack your bags. We're heading east." Destination set: Meteor City. Year: late 1985, early 1986. Public role, unlicensed apprentice spy, non-nen cover profile. Primary mission, assist Kale in dismantling the Mafia Syndicate hub. Hidden objective, observe the birth of the Phantom Troop from the shadows. You pulled your coat tight against the cold ocean breeze and followed Kale into the fog. The spotlight could wait. You were heading into the trash heaps of the Forgotten World, where the darkest legends of the Hunter x Hunter universe were about to be written. Chapter 30, The Forgotten Ground. Early 1986. The smell reached you 3 miles before the horizon even shifted. It was a suffocating, heavy cocktail of sour rust, burning rubber, chemical sludge, and wet rot, the universal signature of Meteor City. To the outside world, this place did not officially exist. For over 500 years, it had served as the dump site for the world's waste. 600,000 people lived here among the towering mountains of discarded metal, broken electronics, and rotting refuse, completely erased from official censuses and legal records. You stood atop a ridge of crushed oil drums, wrapped in a worn charcoal gray poncho that hid the heavy iron and oak braces bound to your forearms. Beside you, Kale wore a battered canvas coat, his dark glasses replaced by a low-profile scarf wrapped around his face to filter the toxic dust. Remember the ground rules, Ren, Kale muttered, his voice muffled behind the fabric. In Meteor City, we don't exist, and the people here don't exist to the outside world. The local elders maintain a delicate, dangerous balance with the mafia syndicates. If we stir up the wrong hornet's nest, the entire city will turn on us. I understand, you replied softly, pulling your hood lower over your eyes. The transmigrator's perception. As you walked through the narrow, twisting alleyways carved out of 10-story piles of scrap metal, your transmigrator mind was hyper-aware of every shadow. This was 1986. Somewhere in these very trash heaps, a young, charismatic Crollo Lucifer was holding secret theater rehearsals in an abandoned church with Machi, Pakunoda, Nobunaga, Phaeton, Finks, Franklin, and Uvogan. The tragedy of Sarasa, the event that would shatter their innocence and forge their ruthless pact, was either looming or had already left its permanent scar on their souls. You weren't here to alter their fate. Interfering with the birth of the Phantom Troop would ripple through the entire timeline with unpredictable, catastrophic consequences. I am an observer, you reminded yourself, keeping your nodes locked in an absolute, ghost-like zetsu. I am here to execute Kale's mission, gather intelligence, and refine my specialist library from the absolute shadows. The mission target, the Trash King Syndicate. Kale led you to an underground enclave beneath a collapsed subway junction in District 4. Target briefing, Trash King Syndicate. Target leader, Gaston, the Sifter. Known operation, human trafficking of undocumented Meteor City children. And illegal military arms distribution. Nen capability, Gaston plus 3 Nen trained bodyguards. Cover identity, Ren. Gaston uses the local kids to sort high-value electronic scrap and weapons parts before shipping them out to Yorknew, Kale whispered, ducking into a shadowed alcove near the rusted subterranean entrance. He believes the elders are looking the other way because he pays them off in black market medical supplies. Kale turned to look at you, his eyes grave. I need you inside that facility, Ren. Since you look 12 and carry 0 public Nen footprint, you can slip into their worker pools without triggering their Nen detectors. Map out their guard rotations, identify the holding cells for the trafficked children, and disable their main gate locks from the inside. What about Gaston? You asked smoothly. Once you signal from the inside, I breach the main doors and take Gaston down, Kale replied, tapping a small, radio frequency tracer into your hand. You cover the children's escape route with your Oakhaven Aegis. Simple, precise, zero unnecessary attention. Infiltrating the slums. An hour later, dressed in filthy, grease-stained rags, you sat among a line of 20 malnourished, silent Meteor City orphans, shuffling through a steel security gate guarded by 2 armed men. A heavy-set man with a scar running across his throat walked down the line, holding a small glass vial containing a glowing aura-reactive fluid, a crude, black market detector used to spot wild Nen users among the refugees. He held the vial near your chest. You didn't just suppress your aura, you used your transmigrator control to lock your nodes into a state so deep and quiet that even your biological heartbeat seemed to slow to a faint crawl. The fluid in the vial remained dead, motionless black. Just another useless brat, the guard grunted, shoving you through the heavy iron door into the dimly lit, subterranean sorting yard. As the iron door slammed shut behind you, you looked around the vast, cavernous room filled with hundreds of children quietly picking through piles of scrap under the watchful eyes of armed mercenaries. You adjusted the rag wrapped around your wrists, feeling the cool, reassuring weight of your conjured braces beneath the dirt. The stage was set. In the heart of Meteor City, surrounded by the forgotten waste of the world, your undercover operation had officially begun.